Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
Yo, it's your boy, the odd guy himself, Malik King Scotty.
Hi, I'm Charlie Edwards.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 113 of the BoxHard Podcast, also known as the Christmas Special for 2017. This will be a slightly different show to the usual thing that we do. So part one is going to consist of the reviewing. There's a little bit to talk about, I suppose. Then we're going to bring in guest number one. Part two will be a little part where we're just going to kind of dedicate it to the, like the honours of the year, if you like those things that happen. For example, like the fight of the year or the fighter of the year or, the top 10 pound for pound lists. We've got you guys to send in your choices as well. So we're going to read them out. I've got them all ready. So yeah, we're going to start with the reviewing. And of course, the Christmas special shows that we've done. This is the third one. This is the third Christmas that we've done a Christmas special podcast. The very first one we did was when we had Prince Charles Martin, who was undefeated at the time. He was just about to fight for the vacant IBF heavyweight world title, in which he ended up winning. We also had Eric Molina on the show for the first time. I think at the time he had only maybe had one or two losses, but yeah, he was, telling his brilliant story about being a teacher. And then we had the Selby brothers on. We had Andrew Selby on the show, obviously undefeated as he still is, just probably 2 or 3 fights into his pro career. He just turned over. And then we had our first current world champion on the show, which was Lee Selby, which was a fantastic interview. I remember Lee Selby really kind of showed me his cheekiness. I think Lee Selby's a really cheeky character. And I said to him, I kind of asked him about him and his brother and what can they both do in the sport, something like that. And I remember he said to me, we're going to be like the new Klitschko's. And I said, well, the Klitschko's are a bit big. And he said to me, yep, but we're a little bit smaller, a little bit better. And he kind of said it so quick, he didn't even need to think about it. So, yeah, excellent stuff, man. So, the following year after that, by the way, I don't want to bore anyone. The following year after that, I think we had Hassan and Dam on the show. We had... that was also the show with David Avanesi, and obviously 2 former world champions there. And then we had Tom Loeffler on the show, and we had a brilliant interview with Nonito Donaire. So that one was a really good show. So both of those shows there have had 4 guests on. So we're going to just see what happens this week. We're going to try our best to bring you as many as possible. But as there aren't too many fights taking place in the coming weeks, it's pretty hard to find somebody relevant, because we like to kind of speak to people that are really relevant in the moment rather than somebody who had a fight a month ago or something like that. So we will see what happens, but there is 100% going to be an interview later on in this podcast, a really in-depth interview with a former middleweight world champion, and a really, really good one. Not somebody who came along, had one good win and then disappeared. No, it will be a really good fighter, believe you me. But let's get with the reviewing now. We're going to start last Thursday in France. 1 or 2 fights to mention on this bill. It happened over in the Palais des Sports Marcel Cerdan, if you don't mind me saying, or trying to say. On this bill, we had Oscar Rivas. He moved to 22-0. It was a points win over 10 rounds against Gabriel Nguma, who's now 8-4, so not much going on there. But Oscar Rivas, I was saying last week, it's pretty weird that he actually came over to fight in France. He, if I'm not mistaken, is a Colombian by way of Canada, something bizarre like that. So, moving up this bill, we have Johan Duapas. He picked up win number 37. He's carrying 4 losses also. He made his opponent retire at the end of 8 rounds. His opponent was Nufel Uta, who is now 15-2. I haven't heard of him, but he was down in round 8 and he decided to retire on his stall at the end of the 8th round, so he didn't come out for round 9. Also on this bill, Ivan Mendy, he picked up win number 40. His record 40-4 with 1 draw, and he took on Jesus Arevalo, who is now 25-3 with one draw. It was a KO in round 8 for Ivan Mendy. Arevalo was cut over the left eye in the 8th round as well. He took a knee and he was counted out, so he decided sort of to quit, but we're gonna take the shine off that a little bit and just go with a KO win for Ivan Mendy. Moving over now to Panama. One fight to mention over here, former foe of Gervonta Davis, Francisco Fonseca. He's the guy that lost to Gervonta Davis on the Mayweather-McGregor undercard. He returned to the ring against Daniel Miranda. It was for the vacant WBO Latino super featherweight title, and Fonseca managed to get the TKO in round 5. So Miranda's now 13-4, and Fonseca, pretty impressive record actually, 21-1 with one draw. Moving over now to the Fantasy Springs Casino in Indio, California, USA. What have we got on this bill? 2 prospects managed to proceed with their unbeaten records intact. Joshua Franco, 13-0 now. He defeated Carlos Maldonado, who's now 9-2. That was a unanimous decision over 8 rounds. Also, Jonathan Navarro, he moved to 12-0. A unanimous decision over 8 rounds against Nelson Lara, who's now 17-9 with 4 draws. And also, I should mention, Joel Gonzalez, he moved to 18-0. It was a KO in round 3 against Isayo Carranza, who's now 15-11 with one draw. Just 3 prospects there, simply getting pretty simple wins. Moving over now to the BB King Blues Club and Grill, New York. One fight to mention over here, the return of the ex-world champion Dejan Zlatikanin, 22-1. He's now 23-1. It was a KO in round 1 against Hevinson Herrera, who's now 22-14 with one draw. So that was his first fight back since being knocked out by Mikey Garcia. Later on in the show, we'll be discussing the knockout of the year. I'm pretty sure that a few people have gone with Zlatikanin's, his knockout defeat against Mikey Garcia early on in the year. Moving over now to Russia. One fight to mention on this bill. I haven't actually watched it. I've been advised not to. Apparently, it was really, really boring. Alexander Povetkin, he took Christian Hammer the distance all 12 rounds. It ended up being a wide points win for Povetkin. He's now 33-1. Christian Hammer, he loses at the top level once again. His record now 22-5. Christian Hammer had a point deducted in round 7 as well for holding, I should point out. I don't know, since Povetkin's come back and he's, had to kind of really be quite careful with what he's taking. And what I mean by that is, it seems like he's fighting clean now. All of a sudden, the knockouts are not coming. I actually thought that he'd knock Christian Hammer out. So did you, Ayaz, and so did our listeners, and we were all wrong there because the actual fight ended up going the distance. That's really it. There's not too much to talk about. By all accounts, it was pretty boring. Moving up the bill, or not moving up the bill, moving over now to Wales in United Kingdom. Return of the former world champion Lee Haskins. His record now 35-4. He got a win against Isaac Quay. That was a points win over 6 rounds. Isaac Quay, he's a decent fighter to a certain level. His record's now 31-15 with one draw. Quay was actually deducted a point for ducking low in the 5th round, and I think he may have even touched the canvas also in that 5th round. So return there of Lee Haskins. I like Lee Haskins. He's been on the show a couple of times, hasn't he? I mean, he's a nice guy, but I really want to see him back properly if his heart is in it. I think they're talking about some kind of IBF interim belt maybe being on the line for his next fight. I don't know if it's been confirmed yet, but that's what I'm hearing. Moving over now to the Pioneer Event Center in California, USA. A couple fights to mention on this one as well. Return of the former world champion. Once again, I've said that about 10 times so far on this show. Jesse Vargas. This was his 30th fight and his 28th win. His record 28-2. He took on Aaron Herrera. Herrera touched down in round 6. It was a unanimous decision over 10 rounds in favour of Vargas. Herrera now 33-8 with one draw. Also on the bill, John Molina Jr. He knocked out Ivan Redkach in round 4. Ivan Redkach now 20-4 with one 1 draw. John Molina Jr., really a guy who, he always comes to fight. He's a banger. He's always in exciting fights, most of the time anyway. His record now 30 wins and 7 losses. But Molina was down in round 2. Redcatch was down in round 3. And in round 4, that was obviously where the fight ended. By all accounts, it was a very, very fun-filled, action-packed fight. I might have to check that one out. Also on this bill, topping the bill, it was a bit of an upset here. Diego Chavez, 26-2 with 1 draw, took on Jamal James, who's 21-1, now 22-1. Basically what happened here, there was a knockout in round 3 in favour of Jamal James. Chavez was down and counted out from a body shot in round 3. So really impressive stuff there from Jamal James. A lot of people were overlooking him in the build-up to this fight. I thought that it was a bit unjust, really. I thought that he probably... I'm not going to say I thought he was going to win, but I think he definitely had a good chance in there. I don't really rate Diego Chavez all that much, even though, his only losses have come to former world champions. So, that's no disgrace in that. Let's see how many times I can say former world champions on this show. Right, moving over now to the Place Bell in Laval in Quebec in Canada. Couple fights to mention on this bill. Our very own Nicola Adams proceeded to 3-0 with a TKO in round 3 against Soledad Macedo. A relatively easy win there for Nicola Adams. Apparently her opponent was really, really, really awful. I didn't really see much of it. I think they showed a few bits on the Box Nation BT Sport early on in the in the start of the actual telecast. It wasn't live, and it wasn't really something that I paid too much attention to, in all honesty. Also on this bill, Cletus Seldin, 21-0, took on Yves Ulysse Jr. Now, this was a really, really interesting fight. The reason was because Cletus Seldin, he'd fought a few weeks earlier. He got another knockout win against a decent guy. I think it was Roberto Ortiz, maybe. And obviously, Yves Ulysse, who really impressed me when he beat Zachary Ochoa, but he'd only lost about 5 or 6 or 7 weeks before, so I thought it was a little bit strange. I mean, when you look at that, there's a guy here that's 14-1, and he's, after 5 or 6 or 7 weeks, he's then getting straight back in against a guy who can really bang, 21-0, if I'm not mistaken, with 17 knockouts, Cletus Seldin. So I thought that was a bit of a strange piece of matchmaking, really, but this is what I saw from the fight. I mean, Cletus Seldin looked a little bit tense walking out. I noticed that straight away, and he also walked out to Hulk Hogan's ring music. I'm not sure why. Ulysses' speed was a real problem for Seldin. I mean, straight away, it was very evident. Ulysses really showed me some great feet. He's a brilliant fighter. Really, really slick southpaw. Great judge of distance. Great counterpuncher. Great power, which was unexpected in some ways. And like I say, coming off a loss, what a performance. Apparently, though, because I didn't actually watch his loss, but apparently his loss was a really close one that he felt he won. So he kind of wanted to, go out and make a statement and end his year on a high, so to speak. So, yeah, I mean, it was a brilliant win for him. Seldin was down in the first round, in the second round, and in the third round. But I mean, when Seldin was down in rounds 1 and 2, he didn't really seem badly hurt. His eyes were clear. He knew where he was. Seldin was cut between the eyebrows also in round 3, and down, like I say, in that third round as well, as I just said. I mean, he got back up after the third knockdown. He grabbed Ulysses' leg, and then he put him on the floor. He seemed really frustrated in there, but you couldn't really blame him. There was no disputing that Seldin is a tough guy, but Ulysses' movement was just giving him too many issues, and he just couldn't cope with it. I mean, Seldin's guard at times was like a cross-handed kind of guard, which was begging for a big uppercut, which Ulysses didn't really throw in the fight. But Ulysses' movement was excellent. Like I say, he kept changing directions. Seldin wasn't even plodding forward at times. I'd say he was hobbling forward. He looked horrible on his feet, wasting energy, ducking and weaving from far out of range, trying to confuse Ulysses, and it just didn't work. But no, really, really good win there for Ulysses, or Ulysse, however it's said. He is now 15-1, a unanimous decision over 10 rounds. Cletus Seldin loses his O here. His record now 21-1. Also on the bill, Antoine Douglas, 22-1 with 1 draw, took on our very own, well, I say our very own, I mean that in terms of the podcast, he's of course Irish, 26-2, Gary Spike O'Sullivan. It was for the vacant WBO Intercontinental Middleweight title. Now, remember, we went to the predictions on this last week, and I simply went with Antoine Douglas because I think he was the favourite in the fight. He was a guy that, most people were going with, and I simply went with him just to try to just win a point on these prediction leagues. And what basically happened is it all went wrong for me, but I was happy anyway because Spike is a friend of mine, of course. But you, Ayaz, went with Spike to win by knockout, and also the listeners went with Spike to win by knockout, so you've both gained a point there. Yeah, Antoine Douglas, I mean, he came out, he gave it a go. I think I've definitely got to rate his heart. It's definitely the first time he's really had to, fight in deep water like that and come up with the goods. And he did in some ways. I mean, he fought back. He seemed to hurt O'Sullivan at certain parts of the fight. It was just an all-out war. O'Sullivan, he likes to fight like that. He likes to turn fights into brawls, if you like. He likes to fight. He likes to fight. He doesn't really like to, like the boxing part of the game. He's more of a tough guy. He's more of a roughhouse kind of guy. And, he did what he does, and he knocked him out in round 7. So very good prediction there from Ayaz and the listeners, and I wish I went with it now. And of course, I wanted it to happen above all, but yeah, I mean, he got the job done. It was a really exciting fight while it lasted, and I think Antoine Douglas can come again. Some people saying, "Oh, that's it for him now." I think that's a little bit harsh. I mean, he's still pretty young. He's definitely younger than Spike. He's now 22-2 with 1 draw. He's fought a couple of good guys, and there's no real shame in losing to Spike, I don't think. I think just because if Spike beats you, it doesn't mean that you're a bad fighter. But yeah, Spike lately's been looking really good. I'm really pleased for him. He's now 27-2. As I say, a TKO in round 7 for Spike. And now the main event, Billy Joe Saunders 25-0, defending his WBO World Middleweight title against the banger David Lemieux 38-3. A unanimous decision over 12 rounds for Billy Joe Saunders. He's now 26-0. He retains his WBO World Middleweight title with another successful defense there. And David Lemieux, that's loss number 4 for him. He's 38-4 inside 42 fights. Firstly, I should mention the predictions. I went with Billy Joe to win on points. You also went with Billy Joe to win on points, Ayaz, but our listeners really let us down here. They went with Lemieux by knockout, which of course we all know didn't really look like it was going to happen at any point of the fight. But to be completely honest, I think the reason why there were so many votes for Lemieux to win by knockout was because his promoter actually retweeted it on their page. So all the Canadian fans were voting for him. But yeah, I mean, Billy Joe, he was incredibly sharp in the first and second round, really. I think it was definitely a clear 2 rounds. The first 2 rounds were certainly very, very easy to score, very clear for him. I felt that Billy Joe was landing power punches, mainly nice big lefts and straight lefts. He trapped Lemieux on the ropes at the end of the second round. He had him in a bit of trouble. Lemieux, he kept falling short. He kept being made to pay as well. Saunders made Lemieux just miss constantly, and Lemieux Saunders looked exceptional. I mean, in the third, Lemieux got a little bit closer to the target, but still not enough to win the round in that round. Great movement, direction changes from Saunders. I had it 4-0 to Saunders after 4 rounds. He was just brilliant. All the US journalists and boxers were taking to Twitter and giving Billy Joe massive credit, like saying stuff like he's making Lemieux look like an amateur, that his offense was as beautiful as his defense, which is something that not many people say. And I think like the US boxers and US media have really bashed Billy Joe quite a lot, saying that he's a paper champion and he's been avoiding all these big fights and stuff like that. And it was good. It was finally good to see some appreciation for our champion, because there's no way that you can say that Billy Joe's not a top fighter, not a good fighter, or even somebody that avoids fights. I mean, he's fought through all the ranks in his professional career, and I've got nothing but respect for Billy Joe. He certainly is a real exceptional fighter. But I felt that round 5 was that big miss from Lemieux, where Billy Joe put his glove on his forehead to look up in the sky because it missed by so far. That was brilliant as well. A little bit of showmanship there. Not too much of it. I don't really like too much of that. But yeah, I mean, Billy Joe hurt Lemieux in the 7th round. It was pretty early on. It was a big right hand. It stumbled Lemieux, and then he hit him with a left that stumbled him again later in the round. Lemieux's nose was proper bloody from those shots there. And if you actually see, when Billy Joe hit him, he hit him so hard that the blood actually spattered over Lemieux's shoulder, which was just mad, and it landed on his back because of the punch momentum from Billy Joe. I mean, but all in all, it was an absolute clinic, a real shutout. From a man that's, like I say, severely underrated in Billy Joe. They say there's no such thing as perfection in life. They do say it. They say there's no such thing as perfection. But that, for me, was the closest thing to it. I mean, the first 8 rounds were brilliant. I think I probably gave Lemieux maybe 1 or 2 rounds at an absolute push. But yeah, for me, I don't know, man. It was a masterclass. Saunders was beating him up. He was looking amazing. He knew he needed to win it wide, by the way, and that's another thing. I think he went in there very, very switched on. He knew he had to win it wide because he couldn't risk any kind of dodgy judging when he's away from home, especially in the home of David Lemieux in an arena like that, in a city like that. But no, I think honestly, Saunders, the better the fighter, the better his performance is. I mean, his last good performance, like I've highlighted a few times now, was against Andy Lee. Since then, the 2 fights he's had, he hasn't really looked too good, and this was apparently going to be his toughest test, and I think we all agreed on that. But I don't know, I think that he looked his best. He really did. It was the best I've ever seen him. Dominic Ingle, I think, has probably been making him watch some of those old Prince Naz tapes, because he was just, really flashy in there, really, really, really exciting, which you don't really say too much about Billy Joe. But no, great jabs, great movement. Kept popping Lemieux's head back with jabs constantly. Absolutely walked it, to be honest. Scorecards weren't really great, but yeah, he's made a defence of his title on the road against a legitimate threat, and he made it look like a cakewalk, to be completely honest. So brilliant win there for Billy Joe, as I've said. And yeah, Lemieux, of course, we can't say too much more on him. He's a good fighter, but it just wasn't for him last Saturday night. What did you make of it, Ayaz? Billy Joe and David Lemieux, what a clinic.
What a fight. Well done to Billy Joe Saunders. This is one of the best fights I've seen for a British to go abroad and beat up an actual champion. A lot of people had David Lemieux knocking this guy out. It's like boxing versus a punch-up. I've never seen Billy Joe Saunders fight like this before, to be honest. I remember when he was fighting with Jimmy Tibbs, and I remember he still had boxing move and the shape that he was in. Now, if you look at it, yeah, from the start, Billy Joe was like boxing him, like outboxing him. There was a couple of times where I remember he did the Muhammad Ali shuffle. That was brilliant. That made me laugh. When I saw him do that, I was like, yes, this is brilliant. And you can see him. He busted David Lemieux's knob. Like, David Lemieux tried for a right hand, yeah? And as you said as well, Billy Joe looked to the sky. Like, nope. At one point, yeah, I actually thought Billy Joe was going to stop him. Like, David Lemieux wasn't throwing nothing. But I can tell you one thing, yeah? I remember watching the fight, yeah? I remember 12 months ago, in this very time, yeah? December 2016, he fought Arthur Akekov. Now, in Glasgow, I thought Billy Joe Saunders was going to lose that fight. It was Billy Joe Saunders. He didn't look right. He didn't have no Jimmy Tibbs. He had no trainer. He had Danny Vaughan in his corner at that time. Now you look at it, 12 months later, he goes and fights David Lemieux and annihilates him in Canada. Now you look at him, yeah, he's gonna. I have to give Billy Joe Saunders huge credit. He's gone and actually beat a big name in David Lemieux. If you look at David Lemieux's interview, right, he says, "Oh, I hurt my hand after the second round." He was running around. He's like, I wanted to have a proper fight with him. This wasn't a fight. Billy Joe was running around. Billy Joe outboxed you and you couldn't do nothing. But let me say, big credit to Billy Joe Saunders. And now I want him in another big fight. Danny Jacobs says in April he's coming to fight in April, and he was to fight Billy Joe Saunders. To be honest, I don't think that fight's gonna happen. I think he'll fight someone else, Billy Joe Saunders. And I want him to fight Golovkin, because I think he'll give Golovkin trouble. I think he can outbox Golovkin.
Yeah, it seems kind of crazy. If you'd have said that last week, everybody would have laughed. But now everyone's like, oh yeah, he's got a point there. You're right, he absolutely annihilated Lemieux. Like I say, Lemieux in the post-fight interview was, a real example of bad sportsmanship, a real example of a bad loser, and he just couldn't face up to it. I think maybe because the build up to the fight was quite bitter. I think that Billy Joe really got inside his head, and I don't really think that Lemieux's really used to that kind of thing. They didn't even give Billy Joe a press conference after the fight, which they definitely would have done if Lemieux become champion, let me tell you. So Anyway, it was what it was, but no, brilliant win. Like I say, I can't hype it up enough. I'm so happy, and you're right, it was one of the best performances from a British fighter, certainly overseas, but definitely this year, all in all, it was an absolute brilliant, dominant performance from one of our best fighters here in the UK. But anyways, moving over now to France, just a couple of other bills to go over. We're going to start with Willie Hutchinson. He moved to 2-0. He knocked out Cyril Jolie, I think it may be said, who's 4-7 now. It was a TKO in round 2. Willie Hutchinson, he's had 2 fights. He's only gone 3 rounds now. His first fight was a first round knockout. His second fight here, a second round knockout. Maybe his third fight, maybe a third round knockout. We'll have to wait and see. Also on the bill, moving to 3-0, the Olympic gold medalist from 2016, Tony Yoka. He defeated Ali Baghouz, who's 10-1 with 1 draw. Well, he's now 10-2 with 1 draw, but yeah, TKO in round 2 for Tony Yoka. Moving over now to Germany. Strange fight here. Avni Yildirim was back in the ring since losing to Chris Eubank Jr. He got in against a guy called Attila Calder, who was 13-6. He knocked him out in the first round. So Avni Yildirim now 17-1. He just had to quickly get that win just before the year ended, just to end it on a high. I forgot to also mention that Lemieux is also a former world champion. Just trying to say it as many times as possible here. Also, moving over to Ukraine, there was a fight or two to mention over there. What do we have? Oleg Malinovsky, he moved to 22-0. It was a knockout in the first round against David Bernard, who's now 13-2. And Malinovsky successfully retained his WBO European featherweight title. Also, Denis Berinchik, he is now 8-0. He fought for the vacant WBO Oriental lightweight title against Alan Valaspin, who's now 11-2. But I'm just saying, really, the reason why I'm mentioning this is because Malinovsky, I believe, is going to be, a decent fighter soon. I think he may become a household name, and also Denis Berinchik as well. So yeah, just thought I'd mention that one there, and also Berinchik getting the KO in round 6. He had his man down also in round 5, I should mention. And coming down to the final bill, if I'm not mistaken, in the Oldham Leisure Centre, Natasha Jonas moved to 4-0 with a TKO in round 2 against Katarina Vistika, who only had 1 win. She's now 1-10. So like I say there, a TKO in round 2 for Miss GB, Natasha Jonas. I think that may be all, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check. Yeah, that is pretty much all of it. So before we wrap up part 1, there's one last thing to do, of course, as always, and it's to welcome guest number 1. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the former professional fighter, promoter, manager, historian, and most important of all, the best dressed man in boxing, Mr. Spencer Fearon. Spencer, welcome to the show.
How you doing, Joe, man? Thanks for having me, man. What's going on?
It's my pleasure, my man. It's my pleasure. It's your debut on the show. I mean, we've been doing it over 2 years now. I really should have called before at some point. My apologies.
No, it's all right, man. Don't worry about that, man. You know what I mean? That's cool, man. That's cool.
Right, so Spence, obviously, this is the Christmas special show. We're coming to the end of a brilliant year for boxing. Obviously, there's no big fights coming up, in the next couple of days or so, because it'll be the end of the year. But this year's been brilliant. What's been some of your best fights this year?
From my best fights this year, Kovalev Ward 2. That was a very, very good fight for me. I really did enjoy that fight, especially a lot of people, naysayers, being on top of saying Kovalev didn't win the first fight. I thought he did win the first fight, but I can understand why people didn't see him winning it. And just seeing how he just beautifully just dealt with Kovalev, hurting Kovalev badly before stopping him. That would stand out. To see Terence Crawford become a undisputed 4-belt holder in the 140 division, that was superb to me as well. Seeing the mastery, magic of Lomachenko in his fights that he had, that was really, really cool. Unfortunately, Regondo quit. And it seems like he just got the blueprint of making guys quit, because he did that with Nicholas Waters the year previous. So that was pretty neat as well. And I mean, Anthony Joshua versus Klitschko, that, you know what I mean? That fight against Vladimir Klitschko was like the standout thing of the year when you want to say for a boxing match. Plus you had two big guys throwing bombs at each other. One guy getting knocked down, and when he got knocked down, he had to use the old adage of motivational speaker Les Brown, when life knocks you down, try and land on your back, because if you can look up, you can get up. Anthony Joshua did that and some, came back beautifully and won the fight. That was a beautiful. That was really, really. We had a great run of fights in 2017, and may it continue in 2018. And I'm pretty much sure that it will.
We certainly hope so. I want to throw a few fights at you that could potentially happen next year, but also fights that have been made. So it's going to be a little bit of fantasy in some ways and a little bit of reality, if you like. So I want to start with this one. I think this is a brilliant fight. I'd certainly love to see it. It's being spoke of right now, but nothing has come to fruition as of yet. Dillian Whyte against Hughie Fury. That's a really good fight, in my honest opinion.
It is a great fight. That is a really, really good fight. But the thing, I'll tell you what's going to make this fight interesting and why I would slightly favour Dillian Whyte in that fight. Because if Hughie Fury's got brilliant feet and he boxes, but it doesn't seem like he's got much of a dig on him. And I would favour Dillian Whyte to tough it out, to bring him in the trenches. Even though Dillian Whyte's not a concussive puncher, but he's a hurtful puncher. And I'll have Dillian Whyte winning that fight, to tell you the honest truth.
Okay, fair enough. Obviously, one that's been made now, the rematch. I know that Tony Bellew was on your show, your own podcast, just yesterday. I listened to that last night.
Okay.
Tony Bellew.
It's a really good show, man.
It was a good show.
I mean, I love Tony Bellew. I'm being real, and Tony Bellew being who he is, he's WYSIWYG. You know what I mean? What you see is what you get, and I rate the guy. I rate the guy for the simple fact of him being involved in the sport and looking at, okay, I'm going to box at heavyweight, but I know my limitations, but I can box guys who used to be down at the weight that I was just campaigning at and became a world champion at, in David Haye and a grudge match. So things have been very, very strategic with Tony Bellew. And there isn't no love lost between the two guys. You heard him on the podcast yesterday. There wasn't no love lost between the two guys. But I'd like to know if the wear and tear hasn't caught up with David Haye. If the guy was constantly injured on numerous times. I remember him pulling out of the Tyson Fury fight, pulling out of the Manuel Charr fight. You know, I mean, there's a blueprint to it. I mean, him getting injured of the last fight when the fight was properly scheduled for. So this just shows that David Haye's got wear and tear and real mileage on the clock. So David Haye is not the fighter of yesteryear. So we're looking at this David Haye of the fighter of yesteryear. There's one thing that fighters can't beat, and that's father time. And worse than that, father time. But father time with injury, it's even going to be harder to break. So I got Tony Bellew winning that fight.
Yeah, I think there was a statistic that came out. I think it was something mad. Like, I think maybe David Haye's pulled out something like 3 of his last 6 or something like that. And only the last fight that he had, I'd just say, obviously, you know, rumours were coming round on Fight Week about the Achilles injury that he never, you know, he said it wasn't. He said it was just rumours, and then it seemed.
Listen, I knew that David Haye was injured and flew out of the country 3 days before the fight. Right? That's ludicrous. You just got to be real. So was that a desperate man trying to hold on to money? I don't know. I don't know David Haye's financial predicament. You know what I mean? I wish him all the best because I've known David since he's been a kid. So that's not me trying to disrespect him in any way. You know what I mean? But what I do know is if that it has been the case and you have been injured and people close to you have told me that David Haye's fighting for the wrong reasons, whatever they may be, right? Now, all of a sudden now, when David Haye was going up for this fight, everyone's looking like, oh, David Haye's going to kill Tony Bellew. David Haye's going to do this. The same guys who were telling me years prior that David Haye shouldn't be fighting no more, he's fighting for the wrong reasons. Do you understand? But because of their love for David Haye, and that's what I'm trying to say, sometimes when you're judging things like Joe, you got to take emotion out of the picture. Do you know what I mean? Take emotion out of it. Be detached from that emotional state of comfortability or sometimes discomfort, because sometimes you're emotionally attached to something, but it's actually hurting you that you're emotionally attached. And if you could do that, then you're judging things correctly. Then I can roll with you and listen to what you got to say. But there's a lot. This is the game. I'm saying, like, people don't want to talk the truth. I don't want to talk the truth because it isn't a sweet taste to it. The truth is sometimes very, very bitter. You know what I mean? The truth is like cod liver oil we used to have to drink when you was a kid. You knew it tasted disgusting, but it was doing the right stuff in your stomach to clean out certain toxins in you. And certain people just need to just be truthful and like drink that cod liver oil before they speak.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Tony made a great point yesterday. Obviously, you know, on the podcast, he said that if it would have been Joshua he was fighting, he wouldn't have took the fight. He simply thought that he could beat me with this injury. I think that was a great point. But anyways, moving on to the next fight. Moving on for the next fight I got for you now. This is one which I think you may struggle to pick a winner in. Derek Chisora versus David Price.
Derek Chisora win that fight. Is it happening? Is it happening?
No. It's not happening, that one. That's just one of my fantasies.
Derek Chisora win the fight. You know why? Because you're dealing with, what was it, Marcus Garvey in the 40s said that without confidence you are twice defeated in the race of life, but with confidence you have won even before you started. I will believe that there's still more fight left in Derek Chisora, and I would have Derek Chisora winning that fight on the simple fact that I know David Price has confidence issues, and because he's got confidence issues, and Derek Chisora believing that this would be last chance saloon for him after losing his European title challenge, that he would go and try and grab this with two hands. And he's not a concussive puncher, but he hits hard enough. And I'd think that Derek Chisora would stop David Price.
Yeah, it's a shame with Price. I think, like you said,
yeah, of course,
with the confidence issues, he'd be a real force. This one.
Well, I remember his former trainer Dave Coolwell pulling out what little hair that he had, being confused about, you know what I mean, trying to get through to David Price. But a lot of that could be just mental issues. But we've known for a long, long time that David Price can't exactly take it on the chops. And that's not me disrespecting David Price at all. Do you understand? But I think a lot of those issues have got to do with his confidence. And to fight someone like a Derek Chisora, David Price is a man that jabs and dances around the ring and come forward. So if you're going to come forward, one thing we do know, there's only David Haye that could stop Derek Chisora. Derek Chisora can take it. We know that he can take it. And even though he's got long arms, but you have to be in range to let off those shots. And when you're in range, even though David Price got elongated reach, you're still going to be in punching range for you to take that one. And I think Derek Chisora, knowing that all I got to do is hit this guy, I think that that's why I would lean to Derek Chisora for that fight.
And this one here is happening. The press conference was today. Obviously,
I was down there.
You was there. In terms of on the road, it's Hackney versus Brixton, two undefeated cruiserweights. One, you know, with the highlight, I suppose, amateur pedigree coming through, Lawrence Okoli, and then the underrated guy, but the guy that does it very much under the radar in the gyms with these top fighters, Isaac Chamberlain. What a fight! I love him.
It's a great fight. Isaac Chamberlain is not underrated. Isaac Chamberlain is actually the betting favourite going into this fight. So
really?
He's not.
I haven't seen
he's a betting favourite. Yeah, he's a betting favourite. And when you speak to most people, I remember earlier this year, they did a Gloves Are Off. So Gloves Are Off was filmed early this year, maybe about, I don't know, September times. And they're saying, why are they filming that? Why they film the Gloves Are Off now? Because they knew this fight was going to happen. They knew this fight was going to happen. Do you understand? And maybe it was like a little test. Let's just put a little feeler to see how they're going to feel in front of the camera, speaking back and forth to each other. And let's build this into British beef, as Eddie Hearn has called this fight. I rate the title, but I would rather call this is more ugusi, which is Nigerian, which is a Nigerian dish for meat, which they use on the sauce, or pili pili. And pili pili sauce is what people from Isaac's home country of Zaire, you know what I mean, the Congo, which they eat, which they put on top of their meat. So I think it is British beef, no doubt, 100%, but it's what taste or flavouring that you're going to put on top of it. Do you understand? And I'm telling you that Oguse is very, very peppery, and so is pili 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 sauce, which comes from Isaac Chamberlain's home continent. So it's gonna be pepper. Trust me, it's gonna be pepper.
Obviously, I mean, Okoli obviously nicknamed the sauce as it is, so I suppose he's got one foot in the door, if you like.
Yeah.
Who'd you pick to win that fight?
That's the thing. Right now, I don't pick anyone, and the reason why, because they got too much to the fight, and when you're dealing with unbeaten fighters, you don't think that you can lose because you're an unbeaten fighter. You do not think that you can lose, especially like you no matter what's happening in your amateur career or anything else. When you turn pro, you clean the slate. It's like all your sins have been washed away, and you've started again. So when you're dealing with two unbeaten fighters, both of them will want it. It's going to be down to the corners. And when I look at the corners, I'm looking at Ted Bammy, who is a beautiful individual and my old club mate. We used to be in the same gyms together when we was fighting pro. Ted Bammy has got to deal with the pressure of the occasion. Ted Bammy's never been in that situation before. You know what I mean? And you're going up against a man who's been in Brian O'Shaughnessy, who's been through the mill, who's worked in corners, who's had champions right throughout the amateurs. So when you're looking at something like that, now this what makes this fight so intriguing. And I think a lot of the fight is going to be won by the corners, and just how Ted Bammy deals with coming in with a great game plan, and to see what Brian O'Shaughnessy comes with his game plan. So for that, you would ask to slightly tip it over to Lawrence Okoli's side. But on the reels, skills pay the bills, heart plays a part. Isaac has shown me both. He's shown me that he's got skills, because he has got skills. He's an avid watcher and studier of Mike McCullum and James Toney, right? And Lawrence Okoli is a little bit raw, but Lawrence has 30 minutes of fighting. All right, 30 minutes of fighting, 40 minutes in total with the rest to detonate his right hand. And if he can do that, then he's going to win the fight. And if Isaac can be smart, he could take Lawrence maybe to late rounds and maybe stop him. So it is actually a pick and fight. And I'd rather like to make my decision on who's going to win the fight closer to the fight.
Okie dokie. Fair enough. I mean, it's a brilliant fight. I'm just happy it's been made. Another one I want to throw at you. We got to try to go through these a little bit quicker because there's a couple here.
All right.
Anthony Yarde versus Frank Buglioni.
Are you for real? Why does anyone think this is a fight? That's a disrespect. No, I'm just being real. You know what I mean? I'm just doing it. And you know the nonsense that I usually get. Oh yeah, Spencer always picks black fighters. Oh yeah, I'm getting sick and tired of that, because Ricky Burns looked very black against Ndongo, and I had him winning that fight hands down. You never, right? Just people just cut that bullshit right out, because I find it very, very annoying. I'm gonna tell you this now: Anthony Yarde would beat up Frank Buglioni. If Frank Buglioni could fight Craig Spider Richards, and Craig Spider Richards had something like 4 days notice or 5 days notice, it was a short space of time, and Craig could go 12 rounds with you. Craig Richards, who's not known as a puncher, I love Craig to death, who was a super middleweight at the time. Craig could take you 12 rounds. And you were in training camp for weeks knowing that he was going to fight. Anthony Yarde would walk through you in less than 5 rounds. And that's no disrespect to Frank Buglioni, because I like Frank Buglioni. And allegedly, I've heard that Frank Buglioni has been offered $200,000 from BT to fight Anthony Yarde, and he ain't signed the contract. That's unheard of money, because I know that he never got that money when he fought for his world title against Chudinov. So therefore, what's going on there then?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I love Yarde to pieces. He's one of my best friends in boxing. But I mean, he looks the real deal, doesn't he? He looks amazing. He looks.
Yeah,
like
go on. What's the butt? Tell me what's the butt, Joey.
The butt
what's
is
the butt? Go on. What's the butt?
The butt is his best opponent was the last guy that he stopped and looked impressive. I was there ringside, but he hasn't. I don't know. He hasn't really got the name or the legitimate threat on his record yet.
And what legitimate threat and name is on Frank Buglioni's record?
Well, obviously, I mean, he lost to Chudinov. I think that was a threat there. I think Hosea Burton was very much a threat. And yeah, let's be honest, Hosea Burton was winning until he got stopped. I don't know. I think he's just a little bit more seasoned as a pro.
Brother. Are you not listening to what I just said to you, Joey? The man went 12 rounds with Craig Spider Richards.
Yeah, I know.
That's it. That's I don't want to hear it. I don't want to seriously about and if Andy Yard is one of your close, I hope that Andy listens to this show. I hope he's gonna listen to this, right? I hope he listens to this, right? Because I'm telling you straight standard, yeah. What Andy Yard's bringing to the table in the fact of punch dexterity, variety of punches. You know what I mean? Aptitude in depth of punches, the girth of knowledge that he has, and his relationship that he had with his trainer Babatunde Ajayi, that they fight on muscle memory. Hence why good trainers don't need to talk in the corner. They hardly speak because they know what they got to go and do. Do you understand? And I'm telling you this now, Frank Buglione is a cool guy. I love Frank. So I don't want Frank thinking like I'm trying to gang up on him or anything else like that. I'm just telling it how it is. You know what I mean? I got to tell the truth. I told you, you got to be like cod liver roll, man. You ain't going to be better to the taste, but I'm good for you. I swear to God, I'm good for you. And Ayaz, he used to go about his last fight. His last opponent, right, went 12 rounds with Stieglitz for the lineal European title. Went 12 rounds and got a draw. Are you listening to me here? Andy Yard blitzed this guy inside. Wait there, Andy Yard blitzed him in 5 rounds. Wait there, Andy Yard blitzed him in 5 rounds. So when we're going to talk about, but there's levels, and he hasn't. Yeah, but I said he blitzes him inside 5 rounds. I'm saying it was 4 rounds that he stopped him, right? So I'm saying when people want to talk about Andy Yard, like, he ain't fought nobody. Hold up, he's beating everyone else that you put him. Everybody else he's beating, they've beating with other guys. Andy Yard's beating him better than what the other guys are beating him, who are ranked higher than him. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And let's be real now, on BoxRec, they've got him, Andy Yard, as the number 1 light heavyweight in the country.
Yeah, I mean, no, look, I think it's a brilliant fight if it does happen. I mean,
Andy Yard, seriously,
I like both guys.
Andy Yard, and so do I. I want the fight to happen, actually, to tell you the truth. I don't sit there and say I don't want the fight to happen. I want the fight to happen. And I'm telling you this now, that Andy Yard would annihilate Frank Buglione.
But yeah, talking of BoxRec rankings, not that I give them much credibility. Do you know what their top 10 pound-for-pound rankings are right now? I just pulled this up a moment ago.
I don't know, go on.
If you want some comedy, hear this. No. Number 1, Canelo. Number 2, Lomachenko. Number 3, Golovkin. Number 4, Crawford. Number 5, Rungvisai, the guy that beat Chocolatito. Number 6, Joshua. Number 7, Miguel Burchelt. Number 8, Furman. Number 9, Luis Nery. And get ready for this. Number 10, Jeff Horn. What's going on?
Yeah, but they do it by a point system. So sometimes by only a point system may not make sense to you guys, but to them it makes sense. But I'm talking when it comes to the ranking of British fighters, then I'm rolling with what they're going with on the fact when they've got Andy Yard at number 1.
Okay, fair enough. Right.
All right.
I know that you've picked Eubank Jr. to beat George Groves. I'm not going to argue that too much, but if he comes through that fight, if Callum Smith comes through Bramer, which we expect, but that's no given also. Callum Smith.
Yes, he is. Callum Smith will get through. It's going to be Callum Smith and Eubank Jr. in the final.
Who wins that?
That's what it's going to be. It's going to be a hard fight because Tony Bellew kind of just bending my arm yesterday. I'm adamant that Eubank Jr. will win that fight. I'm right adamant that Eubank Jr. will win that fight. But Tony Bellew was saying, have you seen the size of him? Have you seen the size of Smith, how massive he is, the punches that Smith throws, how hard he is when he throws his shots? And I'm saying, yeah, but I wasn't too impressed with his Skoglund performance.
Me neither.
Right, and because of that, and I'm seeing Eubank Jr. is looking on fire right now. The Jordan win, that was very, very impressive. And remember, he got given Jordan. He didn't choose Jordan because he wanted to get into the competition and said, well, you got to fight this guy who nobody else wanted to go and fight. And we saw what Eubank Jr. done to him.
Yeah, fair enough. He was definitely a dark horse in the tournament, Yildirim. Talking of Yildirim, he also had a fight this weekend, just gone on Saturday. He had a fight. He come back against a journeyman, knocked him out in the first round, but it is what it is. I'm guessing you saw Billy Joe's performance over Lemieux.
Beautiful
a lot of people
performance.
now beautiful. A lot of people now talking about him and Danny Jacobs. I know Danny Jacobs is one of your favourite fighters overseas. What's your take on that fight? Who'd win that, Billy Joe and Daniel Jacobs? BJ against DJ.
Yeah, it's a great fight. And on a performance that Billy Joe just performed the other day, then you'd have to slightly favour Billy Joe Saunders, mate. And that's the rules. You'd have to slightly favour him. But like I say, with Danny Jacobs, a man could beat cancer, could be anything, right? And he is a superb athlete and a superb boxer. But this is the thing, how it goes. It's like we're looking on Billy Joe saying, oh, how fantastic he is and how great he is, because we did worry about him fighting David Lemieux, because we know Lemieux can lick. Do you understand? He can punch like a dick. Oh, mate. But he took him to school. And the best thing about it is now that he is coupled with Dominic Ingle and he's down in the Winkerbank gym, he's going to do Winkerbank magic. And that's how it goes, because that is the most suited place. Mark and Jimmy Tibbs were not suited for him as trainers. And that's no disrespect to Mark, because they're excellent trainers. But they weren't suited to his style. The Harold Bomber Graham style is suited to the style of a Billy Joe Saunders. And Billy Joe Saunders has gone there and he's mastered that style. And usually it takes 5 fights for a fighter to start bringing out that kind of magic when you get a new trainer. And he's managed to do that within 2 fights. So if he's managed to do that within 2 fights, what is he going to be like 3 fights down the line working with Dominic Ingle? It's just going to be a nightmare for guys. A nightmare.
I will be later on in the show. I'll be speaking to Kelly Pavlik. It's an interview I did a couple of days ago that's going to be on the podcast later. And in that interview, I just want to ask your opinion on this. Kelly Pavlik watched the fight and he believes that, and this is how he described Billy Joe. He said that Billy Joe Saunders he just completely reminds him down to a T of Sergio Martinez, but a little bit of an unpolished version of Sergio Martinez. What's your thoughts on that?
I wouldn't. I think Billy Joe's got better balance than Sergio Martinez. Sergio Martinez had a kind of giddy style certain times when he was doing things. You know what I mean? But I can understand where he's going with it. I can understand him because he did box Sergio Martinez. But I think Billy Joe is an enigma to himself, let alone anybody who's fighting him. But now he's believing in himself, and we're going to see even more stuff. But I wouldn't say that I can understand, because the stance and everything else of Billy Joe Saunders. But I think when you look on someone like Martinez was superb. You know what I mean? His injury what messed that guy up. He was absolutely superb, and he could bang. Billy Joe couldn't bang like Martinez, right? Martinez could punch. You saw what he done to Paul Williams. Do you know what I mean? The guy could bang.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I hear what Kelly Pavlik's saying, but I understand it, but I slightly disagree.
Also, this fight may happen. It's looking like it may happen. Like I say, I want to try to whiz through these a little bit quicker. I don't want to take up all of your time this evening. Liam Smith against Saddam Ali.
Great fight. If Liam Smith can get the right game plan together, then he could beat Saddam Ali. I've known Saddam Ali for about, 10 years now, from when we was out in the New York gyms together. He was still an amateur then. I brought Andy Smalls out to spar, and Andy Smalls was sparring with Danny Jacobs, and who else was he fighting? Peter Quillen, quite a few other guys down in the gym when we was out at the Trinity boxing gym in New York. So yeah, Saddam Ali's a good fighter, man. He's risen through the weights, but he's beatable, and Smith could beat that guy. But Saddam Ali had a fantastic amateur career. And those things, you got to take that into consideration when you're saying, well, okay, then you're going to be up. And no, I don't think Saddam Ali would be in awe or be fearful of Liam Smith like he was. It was a little bit in awe of Cotto, because you're still in with a legend. Regardless if it's an old legend, you're still in with a legend. And they know stuff. You know what I mean? But he stuck to a game plan, and we got to give him all the credit in the world for how he boxed in that fight. But I would like to see Liam Smith in there with that. That'd be a great fight.
Yeah, I think I'd probably just possibly favour Ali in that one, just on the basis of that Cotto win. He looked really good, even though he was a big underdog, obviously.
He did. He did look good.
Another fight that's been made now, actually, one that some people ain't happy with, but for me, I quite like it. Ted Cheeseman against Carson Jones.
That's a great fight. I mean, and Ted Cheeseman's my guy. I've known Ted I know all of his family, right? Ted Cheeseman is very overlooked. Do you understand? Because he's saying, well, sometimes the performance in the gym ain't coming out in the ring, and he can box a lot smoother and everything else. And I think it's a good thing that all these other fighters are getting hype about him. I mean, he's in the same gym as Conor Ben. He's in the same gym as Joe Cordina. He's in the same gym as O'Hara Davis. So the spotlight's not really been on him. But there is no better guy for him to go into as a gatekeeper and a guy where he's going to learn the game as well than Carson Jones. It's a great fight. Ted Cheeseman, but I got Ted Cheeseman winning that fight. It's not going to be easy, but I've got him winning that fight. I've got him scraping through on a really, really tough points win.
Yeah, we certainly hope so. Obviously, he's been a bit of a danger man, Carson Jones, especially last time with Ben Hall. That was hard to watch that, but credit to Ben Hall.
And he got bumped against Margarito as well, so don't forget that one as well.
Yeah, we should mention that also.
Yeah.
A great matchup that could potentially happen at 147. Errol Spence against Terence Crawford. Oh, love it.
Yeah, wicked fight. Terence Crawford wins that fight, though.
Okay.
Seriously.
Any particular reason?
Because he can do more things than what Errol Spence can do. Errol Spence can box southpaw, can weigh you down. He's very calculated and a sharpshooter. But we have a guy who can box orthodox and southpaw, who sharpshoots. But not only sharpshoots, he sharpshoots and he's the faster of the two. So I would favour him to win that fight. Errol Spence could try and walk him down, and because Errol Spence can cut corners, he cuts down the ring really well, and he walks you down, and he's persistent. But I think that the guy with the greater repertoire is actually Terence Crawford, and Terence Crawford was my pound-for-pound number one fighter in the world as well. So I would slightly favour him to win that fight. But if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. You know what I mean? Because both are great guys, and both are doing great things for boxing as well. But I slightly favour Terence Crawford. I think he's got that little bit more special on him.
Furman versus Jeff Horn.
Well, we're meant to talk about that fight. You for real?
Two world champions.
Next question, man.
Two undefeated world champions.
Come on, man. The talk is that Terence Crawford. Seriously, let me tell you this. Jeff Horn is a Commonwealth champion of the world. That's who he is. He's a Commonwealth champion. Back in the day, I mean, he would have been brought over in a Commonwealth title defense. In a Commonwealth title defense against Lloyd Hannigan back in the day, and Lloyd Hannigan would have smashed into bits. You got Manny Pacquiao. You a very dubious points win over Manny Pacquiao as well. You know what I mean? Gary Corona, no disrespect to Gary. Gary's a very, very good domestic fighter. He ain't world class. That doesn't give you a chance to say you're fighting. He was chosen for that fight as well. You know what I mean? Yeah. Let Jeff Horn go and fight guys like Terence Crawford, and he'll get scored. And that's the talk that they're meant to be fighting. He's meant to be fighting for his WBO title. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think that's a one-sided victory for Crawford, of course. Here's one for you then. This one I really like, which probably won't happen, but it's one of my fantasy fights. You were very honest when you were talking about Josh Taylor and O'Hara Davies. How about this? O'Hara Davies versus Jack Catterall.
Oh, good fight. Really good fight.
I make you think for a couple of seconds.
Yeah, you did. I was. You know what? I haven't seen a lot of Catterall, but he's good. I've seen a couple of his fights. I haven't seen that much of him. But I would rather. I would say
Tyrone Nurse, didn't he? Recently.
Yeah, I know he just beat Tyrone Nurse, and that's a very good win.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. Well, you know what? I would go O'Hara Davis because I think they're trying to make that fight anyway, and it hasn't happened. And I was like, yeah. I would slightly favour O'Hara Davis.
Okay. Anthony Crolla versus Luke Campbell.
Wicked fight. You know what I mean? And I would have to favour a younger, fresher man in that fight. So that means I would have to favour Luke Campbell. And Luke Campbell Luke Campbell fought really, really well against Jorge Linares.
He did, yeah.
He did, and coupled with what he was coming through, because his dad just passed away while he was in camp, you know what I mean, the week of the fight, and he went and performed the way that he did, and he performed gallantly, I would slightly favour him. I think the wear and tear is getting the better of Crawler. I did commentary recently. Last month I did commentary with Crawler for Al Siesta Boxing for Colin Lyons' last professional fight. And it was for a WBC championship or WBC silver belt or something. And it was sad to see, but I think he's at the tail end of his career now in Crawler. He's been a fantastic ambassador for the sport. I mean, he's been a world champion. He's made decent money. I would slightly favour the younger, fresher man, and the fresher man is actually Luke Campbell.
Yeah, lovely guy, Crawler, and obviously, like I say, Campbell there, like you mentioned, with his issues outside the ring, and more importantly, to keep it quiet until after the fight, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Martin J. Ward coming off a brilliant win. What happens if he takes on Stephen Smith coming off a bad loss?
Oh, man.
That's
you know what?
Fight.
It's a wicked fight. I don't know both the guys really well. But same kind of scenario. Stephen Smith's been in the game a very long time now. And Martin J. Ward's the kid that's on the up. So you would slightly favour Martin J. Ward, but don't be surprised if Stephen couldn't clap him to stop him, But I would favour Martin J. Ward.
Selby Warrington.
Selby all day long. Warren doesn't crack hard enough. Warren doesn't crack hard enough, and he hasn't got the skill set to deal with Lee Selby. And that's the truth. And not only that, but Lee Selby needs a big fight to perform. Because if Lee Selby goes in lackluster, the work rate of Warren will outpunch him and beat him. But I would have to go with Lee Selby because he's proven, especially when he won the world title, right? Where he showed me like he can go up gears and change up levels. So if you can do that, then I believe that somebody like a Josh Warren in that fight, they will bring the best out of a Lee Selby. I think Lee Selby would win that fight on points.
Yeah, that's the thing about Selby. You know, like, he obviously isn't as big of a name as he probably could have been if he stayed in the UK. But when you look at his victories, even though...
Because they ran for the money. These guys all ran out
to
America for the money.
He did.
Right? And it didn't work for him.
If you look at his... You know, he's not really knocking many people out, but he's beating them widely on points. Do you know what I mean? So it's a shame with him. But yeah, I think that'd be a great fight. One that's been made, as far as I know, today. Carl Frampton, Nonito Donaire.
Right? Nonito Donaire's finished, man. You're talking about Carl Frampton, Nonito Donaire. Yeah, Nonito Donaire when? What are we talking about? Are we talking about the guy that got schooled by Rigondeaux? Or are we talking about the guy that got badly knocked out by Nicholas Waters? It's a good fight for a hot minute, but Nonito Donaire's done. Trust me. I don't want a fighter's done. He's done.
Coming down to the last couple now. Kid Galahad, Scott Quigg.
Galahad.
Oh, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, trust me.
How come?
Galahad is a lot better than what you think. Trust me.
I know how good he is, but the general public, yeah, they
don't know. Galahad rumbles inspiring with Kell Brook. Kell Brook is a very big welterweight, and he's now a super welterweight. So yeah, I've got Galahad winning that fight, and not only that, but what has he done? What has he done to change gears or up things in the fights? He hasn't done anything. Scott Quigg. Scott Quigg's got out to America, and he looks like he's gone backwards. He hasn't gone forwards.
Yeah, fair point. I suppose.
I'm being real.
Fair point. One that got tweeted yesterday. Gavin McDonald tweeted Gamal Yafai for a fight. What's your thoughts on that?
Boy, the way Gavin boxed so gallantly, boy. Oh, that's a tough one, Maybe McDonald in that fight,
Yeah, maybe.
But no. Yeah, maybe McDonald in that fight. Yeah.
And finally, on these questions here, I think you said it yesterday, actually, on the podcast. Deontay Wilder's the biggest threat to Joshua. I think we all know that until, Fury, if he can recapture what he was. How do you see that one going down? Wilder-Joshua, Spence?
The biggest threat to Anthony Joshua is actually Tyson Fury, but I would
if he
Wilder
can reclaim
Joshua.
What he was, though.
I reckon he will. I mean, Wilder Joshua. Oh man, I will slightly favour Anthony Joshua because of better rounded boxing ability, but both guys be swinging.
Yeah, and if that does happen, then
both guys be swinging. Yeah, both guys will be swinging, but I think I will slightly favour Anthony Joshua, but it wouldn't surprise me if Anthony Joshua was to get knocked out by one of them wild right hand swings.
Yeah, could happen to anyone. Like I say, probably the hardest puncher in the heavyweight division in terms of one punch.
I would say single shot. Yeah, single shot. Most definitely, he's the hardest single shot puncher in the heavyweight division.
Yeah,
without a doubt, he's a monster, without a doubt. But I'm just looking at pedigree, and pedigree to be an ABA champion, to be a World Game silver medalist, to be an Olympic champion, to be a British and Commonwealth champ as a professional, and then a world champion, and then beat Klitschko in the way that he did, then I would greatly favour Anthony Joshua. And it's not a pick 'em because it's like who lands first, but now I'm saying who lands first with a better technical prowess, and that would be Anthony Joshua. But Anthony Joshua don't punch like how Deontay Wilder punches. Deontay Wilder has that concussive punching power.
Yeah.
And it is concussive. But I'll still pick Anthony Joshua to win that fight because I've seen you against Gerald Washington, the American football player, and that you reminiscent to me of Primo Carnera. So that's not going to stand you in good stead to say you're going in against Anthony Joshua, but you did impress me against Jermaine Stavern, regardless that Jermaine Stavern came in fat and ill-shaped and out of shape. But regardless of that, it was a number that you did on it. Made me say, wow, that was impressive. And a lot of people kind of dissing Stavern because of that. But I'm saying, listen, what you can do is beat what's in front of you, and he beat him impressively.
Yeah.
But I still got Anthony Joshua winning that fight.
Yeah, I think me too. And finally now, I've put together like a little short list of prospects that I've kind of got on a list that I call one to watch for next year. I think top of that list has to be Josh Taylor. I've got Dubois on there. I've got Yard on there. I've got Josh Kelly on there. I've got Joe Cordina. Any other names that you want to add, or names that you think I should take off or agree with?
Joshua Boazzi.
Oh yeah, of course. From my estate, actually.
Okay, is that where you from? You South London, yeah?
Croydon.
You Croydon for real? You're down the road from me. Wicked. All right. So he's got to be on there as well. Josh Boazzi's got to be on there as well. I think he's the reincarnation of Evander Holyfield. There's so many similarities between him and Evander. Just fighting-wise, the way that they're both devout Christians, all those kind of things. I think that's the guy he's one to watch. He really is one to watch. But Dubois is fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, I tell you, the winner of Coley versus Chamberlain is going to be the one to watch. But both of them should be on there anyway because both of them are very, very good prospects. We've already covered Ted Cheeseman, who I think he definitely one to watch, right? And he ain't going to be the full article for now, but trust me, he's one to watch. There is a relentlessness and a toughness about this guy that is throwback to the 50s, kind of. Swear down.
Okay, well, if you say it, then if the historian says it, then I can't disagree. No, Ted Cheeseman's good. That's a good list.
Good fight, man. Good fight.
And just before I let you go, Spence, anything that you want to tell our listeners at all before I let you go?
Yeah, was it in Westminster on the 20th of January, the world famous and renowned motivational speaker Les Brown is coming to town. I'm actually hosting Les Brown, which is incredible because he's just a fantastic orator and one of the greatest motivational speakers of all time. He's been ranked top 5. That's ridiculous. He's coming to town, so I'll be very fortunate to host him. So get your tickets for that event. It's a lady called Miss Althea Grant, who's the daughter of Bunny Grant. This is way before your time. Bunny Grant was a former Commonwealth welterweight and lightweight champion from Jamaica. He was a fantastic fighter in the 50s and 60s and was the first Jamaican to ever challenge for a world title. He was something else. And so it's his daughter that's actually putting on the event. I'm just very, very grateful to say that I'm going to be on the same stage as one of the greatest motivational speakers of all time, and he's been a massive influence to me as well, Les Brown. So go check that one out. You know what I mean? If you guys want to go get motivated, go check that one out. Also keep it #toe-to-toe on Ringside Toe-to-Toe Sky Sports, the world's largest listen to boxing podcast. This is not my words, this is facts. I'm very, very grateful for doing what I'm doing, and big up every single person that listens, every person that comment on my show, comment on Joey's show, comment all around the whole board on boxing, whether you like me or love me, you know what I mean, hate me or despise me, I don't care. Just keep on talking, because your love and your hate adds as helium to me and it rises me higher. And trust me, everyone knows I'm flying, so I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. All right?
Well said. Okay, listen, Spencer, it's always a pleasure speaking with you, my friend. Thank you for your time. Enjoy your Christmas and New Year, and we'll speak again sometime soon.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking out to listen to Kelly Pavlik, because I really did rate him as a fantastic fighter. I think it was great that you got him on your show. All right, brother?
Okay, now it's time for part 2 on this week's show. Usually it's the preview part, but of course there's nothing to preview at all apart from a Christmas dinner, which we're not going to do. So, yeah, there's no previewing, so we're going to really discuss quite a few things here. It's going to be quite fun, hopefully, but firstly, we're going to bring in Ayaz with the latest news. We couldn't forget that segment. Ayaz is the best at it. Ayaz, what have you got for us this week?
A big British beef boxing and fight going out just today. On February the 3rd, we will see Lawrence Okoli versus Isaac Chamberlain at the O2 Arena.
Yes, a real grudge match. One that I've got to give both men credit for taking it. Because, both men obviously undefeated very, very early on in their careers. And I know that they say, well, it's really early and a loss at this stage won't really matter. It's best to come at this stage than at world level. And in some ways that can be true. But I think that, whoever wins the fight will really push on to big things pretty soon. And I think whoever loses, especially if it's Isaac Chamberlain, I think he can get thrown to a pack of wolves, really. So it'll be interesting. It really will. But I think the loser in this, like I say, especially if it's Chamberlain, I don't think he will come off too well if he does lose. But credit, like I say, to both men for taking it. It's a brilliant fight. It's funny because they're talking about it possibly headlining, I think, because there's been nothing on Dillian White, and it's a bit weird. From originally it was supposed to be an O2 fight, obviously 3rd of February. It was supposed to be on the undercard of Dillian White, but that's kind of gone a little bit quiet now, and now I'm seeing fight posters with Lawrence Okoli and Isaac Chamberlain in the middle of it, so I don't quite know what's going on there. But yeah, either way, it's a great fight, and if I'm not there in attendance, I'll certainly be watching it. I'm really, really looking forward to it. Seriously am.
Reece Bellotti will face Ben Jones for Commonwealth Featherweight title.
Yes, Reece Bellotti, obviously, a guy that's undefeated on the up. He's had quite a decent year. He's really kind of, growing into the sport now. I think at first he was looking quite good. Then when they stepped up his level in opposition, it took a little while to get used to it, I feel, even though he was winning. Don't take that the wrong way, but I think he's warmed into it now, and he's really getting to that level where, he's going to be fighting these opponents that we've heard of. He's going to be fighting these opponents that are definitely bringing something there, not just to lay down, but bringing a winning mentality and also, bringing a challenge first and foremost. So, yeah, this is a brilliant step up for him. I think it's the right time. I think Ben Jones, obviously, Ben Jones has got a couple of losses. When you actually analyse them deeply, one of them was to Lee Selby. He's fought good fighters, Ben Jones. He's no walkover, but I think he may have kind of maybe, I don't want to be too harsh, but I think he's maybe past his sell-by date a little bit. So it could be the right time to take him, but we'll have to wait and see. But all the very best to both men, and simply may the best man win. But it's another cracking fight, really. Another great domestic fight for next year that I'm looking forward to.
And finally, Ted Cheeseman will face Carson Jones.
Yeah, that's another great fight. I mean, they were talking about originally for Ted Cheeseman to take on James Metcalf, I think, and he's 17-0. A decent fighter, if I'm not mistaken, under the MTK umbrella. I mean, that would have been decent, I suppose. He's obviously doing all the right things in his career, but I really like this fight. I think Carson Jones, I think it's a brilliant fight, to be honest. I mean, only if he wins, by the way, because the British fans obviously know Carson Jones very well. Last time he was over here, he beat Ben Hall. I remember being there for that one. That was a big step up in class, and this is a big step up in class. So could Eddie Hearn have overlooked and underestimated Carson Jones once again? We'll have to wait and see, but one thing is for sure, if Ted Cheeseman is the real deal like a lot of people in the trade say he is, then he will prevail, and it will be a brilliant name for his resume. That's what I will say. So I'm really looking forward to that also. I think I've maybe criticised Ted Cheeseman once or twice before. I think he's technically very good, but sometimes I kind of switch off when he's fighting a little bit, like attention wise. It's just, I don't know, he just doesn't really do it for me. I can't really put my finger on why, but this fight will be one I'll certainly be watching. Maybe it's because I haven't really heard of any of his opponents thus far, but yeah, I'll be definitely watching this one with a keen eye. And is that it for the news, Ayaz? Yeah?
Yes, that's it for the news.
Okay, also we should mention another fight that I forgot in the reviewing. I thought I'd quickly go over this. There's a guy in China, a Chinese fighter called Junlong Zhang, who is now 19-0. He just got a win in China. It was for the WBA Oceania heavyweight title. He got a win against Victor Emilio Ramirez, who's 22-4 now with one draw. That was a 12-rounder. And the reason why I bring that up is because Ramirez is the guy that used to hold the IBF, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was the IBF Cruiserweight World title. He's the guy who fought Oval Mackenzie to a draw, and he's now moved up to heavyweight, and he's took on Zhang here, and he gets knocked out in the very first round. So Zhang, who by the way is 19-0 with 19 knockouts, he's 36 years old. I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with him. He's fought quite a few decent guys, not really many losing records. I'm just looking at his record now. He's got one losing record. He's got a few debutants on there as well, but 19-0 with 19 knockouts. Let's not overlook that too much. I think he had a decent amateur career as well, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, that's definitely a name to listen out for. Junlong Zhang is the name. I've got to talk about one funny name fighter that I've seen, and I swear to God, I think someone's having a wind-up. It's actually a guy that's fighting in Roma, in Lazio, in Italy. I think it's this week. It's a 6-rounder, and this guy's name, and I'm not even kidding, it just kind of fits in. It's the Christmas special show. We're trying to do something a little bit exciting here, and there's a guy with a name like this at the perfect week. This guy's name, by the way, I'm going to read his record first. His record is 3-2. This guy's name is Seaman. Yeah, the proper spelling, Seaman. And his last name, I'm not even joking, is Leave In. That's his name, Seaman Leave In. I swear to God, this guy, if there was any other funny name fighters this week, he'd win it. So we're just going to give the points there to Seaman Leave In. So Ayaz, round of applause for Seaman Leave In. Very well done, Mr. Seaman. That's another one in itself. Right, let's talk about now as the top 10 pound for pound list. We've asked our listeners to send in theirs as well. I'm just going to really mention a few of theirs first, and we can discuss what we think of their list. We're going to start with a guy that sent in a list on Twitter. This is from @Jamie_Ingleby79. Now, he sent a very interesting list in here. Number one, he's gone with Terence Crawford. I think that not many can argue with that. I think that's fair enough. I think there's 1, 2, or 3 guys that could be at the very top, but Crawford, he's definitely up there. Triple G number 2. I think that's fine. Canelo number 3. Also, Ayaz, remember to jump in if you've got anything to say here. Mikey Garcia number 4. Do you think that could be a tad high for Mikey, or maybe not? What's your thoughts on that?
I would have put Lomachenko, but when I do mines, I can tell you mines and I'll compare it to others. I can
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. He's got Lomachenko at number 6, but yeah, Mikey Garcia number 4, Leo Santa Cruz number 5. I'm not sure I'd put him above Lomachenko. Number 7, he's got Usyk. Number 8, he's got Inoue, which I think, that's definitely someone who arguably could be up there for sure. It definitely goes to show that this guy watches those lower weights. Number 9, he's put Billy Joe Saunders in the top 10. Maybe a tad hastily. But no, Billy Joe, the performance that we spoke about earlier on in the show, he certainly fought like a guy who is in the top 10 or so, but I'm not quite sure that I'd stick him in there. And number 10, this one could be quite controversial. Jamie Ingleby's gone with Katie Taylor number 10. I mean, obviously we were talking about, top 10 pound for pound being a men's thing. I'm not quite sure that he meant to slot her in number 10 because he's gone with Katie Taylor for knockout of the year with a body shot. I can't remember what fight that was in, Ayaz. Do you remember Katie Taylor stopping a lady with a body shot?
It may be her second fight. I'm not.
No, it would have been this year. It was this year. I'm very sorry to Jamie Ingleby. We should know this. Let me quickly have a look at that. See if I look at the date, see if it brings back any memory, any recollection. She stopped. It obviously wasn't the other day. She's had a couple fights this year, to be honest. It's hard to... I think she's had 5 or 6 fights this year. I can't find it, to be completely honest, so I'm very sorry about that. But looking at the fighter of the year, Jamie Ingleby's gone with Mikey Garcia. I think that's a fair shout, to be completely honest. As we mentioned, Mikey Garcia definitely a contender of knockout of the year. This year he's had 2 fights in total, one against Dejan Zlatikanin, in which he captured the WBC lightweight title, a knockout in round 3 there of a contest he dominated from the start. He also took Zlatikanin's unbeaten record, and then he went on to dominate Adrian Broner pretty much 8 rounds to 4. That was in July, and now he's signed to, of course, fight for his fourth world title in 4 different weight classes, up at 140 now against Sergei Lipinets. I think Mikey Garcia's in with a shout. Ayaz. He's had a good year, hasn't he?
Oh, he's had a brilliant year so far. I reckon he's a very good fighter as well. Yeah,
top class. Right, now we're gonna mention somebody else's list here. This is a very loyal listener here, Ricey_SUFC. I think he won the Anthony Yarde signed glove when we gave that away a few months ago now, and he sends in his top 10 list here. At first he's got Lomachenko, and second he's gone with Triple G, third Canelo, fourth Crawford, 5th Furman, 6th Usyk, 7th Mikey Garcia, 8th Linares, 9th Leo Santa Cruz, 10th Anthony Joshua. No mention of Lomachenko in his top... Oh, sorry, yeah, he's first. What am I talking about? Who's he missing out there? I can see that there's someone missing from there. He's got Loma, Triple G, Canelo, Crawford, Furman. No, I quite like that list. That's quite a strong list. And putting Joshua at 10, I think now, when you actually look at it, I think Joshua maybe does deserve a top 10 slot, to be honest.
I don't. I got someone else if I had to choose.
Who?
Errol Spence Jr.?
No, because, I don't know, when you look at it, who's on his resume? He's got Bundu on there, which I'm not going to put him up for that. He's got Kell Brook. We know, I don't want to make too many excuses for Kell Brook, but obviously he come and crashed the weight a little bit. Yeah, he's got Chris Algieri, but I don't know, how good was he? Didn't he retire after that fight? Who else has he got on there? I think he's got Chris Van Heerden, but how good's he? I'm not sure I'd stick him up there, to be honest. I think I'd probably put... I don't know. I'd probably have somebody... To be honest, I'd probably have somebody else right up there instead of him. I don't think I'd stick him in. It's up to you. You got your list, of course. We'll get to that momentarily. Who else have we got there? He's gone with his fighter of the year, Lomachenko. I think that's a very, very popular answer. And knockout of the year, he's gone with David Lemieux against Curtis Stevens. That was a proper knockout, wasn't it? Do you remember that?
Brilliant.
That was brutal. And based on that, that's why a lot of people picked Lemieux to beat Saunders. Also, we've had one sent in from, this is on Twitter, at EdMessenger28. He's gone with number 1 Lomachenko, number 2 Crawford, number 3 Triple G, Number 4, Inoue. Number 5, Canelo. Number 6, Sor Rungvisai. Number 7, Mikey Garcia. Number 8, Errol Spence. I think that's a little bit high, in my opinion. Number 9, Keith Thurman. Ed, you cannot put Spence over Thurman, man. You can't do that. Not yet. And number 10, Rigondo. He's still in his top 10 despite the quit job. I think that's a strong top 10 though. I'd probably shift a few of them around, but I think that's quite a good top 10. The knockout of the year, he's also gone with Lemieux versus Stevens. I think that's definitely a contender. It was really brutal. And fighter of the year, he's gone with Crawford, simply for unifying the 140 division. And I think that, you know, you can't overlook that. That's a stone cold fact. And the way he did it, Terence Crawford has really, I mean, last year, I think when we did this last year, I'm sure I gave Crawford fighter of the year last year. And there definitely is an argument that he could be fighter of the year once again. I mean, he had 2 fights. You know, he made Felix Diaz quit after 10 rounds, defended his title, and then obviously unifying them with Julius Indongo, knocked him out in the 3rd round back in August, and that was a demolition job. So definitely a contender for sure. But I'm going with somebody different. But yeah, moving over now, we've got another one that was sent in. This one was actually by Diego, who's done the show with me quite a few times when you've been absent, Ayaz, obviously a former employee of the Boxing Voice. He's gone with number 1 Golovkin. I'm not sure if he's done this in order. I think he has. Number 1 Golovkin, number 2 Canelo, number 3 Keith Thurman, number 4 Crawford, number 5 Mikey Garcia, in 6th Lomachenko, 7th Kovalev, 8th Errol Spence Jr. And it seems like he's only sent in 9 names because he's put Inoue in number 9. I think that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, he sent 9 in, so that's a top 9 from Diego there. Knockout of the year, he's gone for a bit of a wild card. He's going with the Jamel Charlo knockout against Erickson Lubin a few months back. That was definitely a shout as well. That was a brilliant knockout. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, brilliant knockout. And he's gone with fighter of the year. He's actually gone with Jamel Charlo, so he's obviously a big fan of Jamel Charlo. I mean, Jamel Charlo, it's hard, like, we've always said for quite a while that Jamal Charlo's the better of the brothers, but when you actually look at his resume and compare it to Jamel's really looking good. I mean, he's 30-0 now. This year he had 2 fights. He knocked both his opponents out. Charles Hatley, which I think was a mandatory, he knocked him out in 6 rounds, and he was also down in the 3rd round. And then the way he dispatched of Lubin, who at the time I actually picked Lubin to win, which was one of my worst picks ever. He got knocked out in the 1st round. You know, he's coming off of quite a few knockouts now in a row. I think he's really becoming a bit of a superstar, Jamel Charlo. So yeah, I quite like that one as well. Also, another guy that's been tuning into the pod for quite a few weeks now, another guy that I think won a prize at one stage, at Valley Legend on Twitter. This is from Danny. He sent in a list here. Lomachenko number 1, Golovkin number 2, number 3 Terence Crawford, number 4 Canelo, number 5 Santa Cruz, number 6 Tyson Fury. I mean, a little bit of an asterisk attached to that because obviously Tyson Fury hasn't yet returned. We don't really know how good he is, so I've kind of I meant like active fighters, so taking him out. You've got Usyk, which I think that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's got Usyk in 7th, and he's got Errol Spence in 8th. So a lot of people agreeing with you, Ayaz, sticking Errol Spence in. He's got AJ in 9th, and he's gone with Thurman 10th. But I just can't understand people that are putting Errol Spence above Keith Thurman after Keith Thurman's, beaten, the likes of Sean Porter and Danny Garcia, arguably the other 2 top guys at 147. I know that Errol Spence has only just kind of burst on the scene, just picked up a title, hasn't even defended it yet. I can't see why he'd be ranked above Thurman. And he's also gone with a wild card in terms of his favourite knockout of the year. He's gone with John Ryder knocking out Patrick Nielsen on the Groves and Cox undercard, a fight that I was there for ringside. Patrick Nielsen was ranked number 1 by the WBA. But anyway, had him down in the 2nd round and also again in the 5th round, but it was brutal. And I actually didn't think John was going to be able to do that, and he really showed up. That was unbelievable. I'm so pleased for him. So yeah, I really like that, and it was... He's just added it was brutal and it was a massive surprise, which it really was. He's also gone with fighter of the year, Lomachenko. He doesn't just win, he takes the will and life out of his opponents. What a boxer. Can't disagree with that. Also, we've got a list sent in from this is on Instagram actually, @Robbie_FFM. This is a regular listener. Shout out to Robbie. He's gone with pound for pound number 1 Crawford, number 2 Lomachenko, number 3 Fearon, number 4 Spence, number 5 Inoue, number 6 Rungvisai, number 7 Joshua. That's quite high. Number 8 Mikey Garcia, number 9 Jorge Linares, and number 10 Gallo Estrada. That's a questionable one as well there. Who's missing? He hasn't got Triple G or Canelo in his top 10. Robbie, what's going on, my friend? No Canelo, no Triple G. I'm expecting answers on that. Yeah, I mean, there's some questionable ones in there. Joshua as far as 7. Inoue 5th, okay. Rungvisai right up there in 6th. Lomachenko and Crawford, number 1 and 2, no argument with that. Number 3, Fearon, could be a tiny bit high. He's also gone with, I've asked him for Fighter of the Year, he sent me 3, he sent me 4, he sent me Errol Spence. I mean, Errol Spence, if I'm not mistaken, hasn't he just had the one fight of note anyway this year? Errol Spence, just want to quickly check that. Obviously beating Kell Brook the way he did. Yeah, he's only had 1 fight this year, so I don't think we can say he was active enough to capture that one there. He's also gone with Charlo Bros. He hasn't specified which one. I think he may be saying both of them. They've both been good fighters, but I'm not sure I'd put them at the very top, especially Jamal Charlo. He moved up and fought a guy who was injured. Mikey Garcia is also nominated as well for Fighter of the Year. That's definitely a good shout, as we mentioned earlier. And he's also gone with Charlo's knockout of Lubin as well in the first round there, knockout of the year. Again, one that I can't argue with. Really good choices from our listeners' eyes. They obviously know what they're talking about. As I say, they're winning in the prediction league. But my list and your list now, Ayaz. Go on, you go first. I'll listen to yours first. Who's your top 10 pound for pound, 1 through to 10?
Okay, first one I'm going to go for Vasyl Lomachenko.
Yep.
Had to be him. Number 2, Triple G.
Okay. Number
3, Crawford.
Yep, I've got the same 1, 2, and 3, but in a bit of a different order. Yep.
Number 4, Canelo.
He's my number 4 as well. Yep.
Number 5, Mikey Garcia.
Okay.
Number 6, Jorge Linares.
Okay.
Number 7, it has to be Rungvisai.
Okay.
Number 8, Usyk.
Yep.
Number 9, Spence.
Ooh, yep.
And number 10, I'm probably going to go for Inoue. All
right. Right. Well, I've gone with Lomachenko number 1. You can tell me what you think of this, Ayaz, if you want to criticise any part of it. I've gone with Lomachenko number 1. I've gone with Crawford 2. And the reason why I haven't put Golovkin is because, obviously, on paper, Golovkin drew with Canelo, even though I don't think that was the right result. I think I've probably shaded it to Crawford for that fact. Number 3, I've gone with Golovkin. Number 4, I've gone with Canelo. Number 5, I still got to put him in there, Rigondeaux. I still think he's one of the best in the world. Even though he didn't look it against Lomachenko, you've got to cut him a bit of slack. He moved up 2 weight divisions. Number 6, I've gone with Fearon. Number 7, I've gone with Kovalev. I still think that with Andre Ward out of the picture, he certainly is the best at light heavyweight until proven, until he gets beaten, really, even though there's some killers coming through. I've gone with Usyk in number 8. Even though he probably hasn't got the most biggest names on his record. He's only like 13-0, but I think he's a brilliant fighter. I've gone with Mikey Garcia number 9. I know that's a little bit high in the top 10. When I say that, I mean a little bit high in terms of the numbers. He really could be pushed up a few numbers. Number 9, Mikey Garcia. And number 10, I've put Joshua in there. And the reason why, and like I say, Joshua being in the top 10 is debatable. A lot of people don't want to do it because, it's casual. Well, the reason why is because I think that since Joshua beat Dominic Brazil, he's really proved that he's actually a very, very solid fighter and definitely no walkover. So, obviously, the win over Klitschko, it was what it was. I've criticised that enough. Dominic Brazil, he did take Charles Martin's O. He took Dillian White's O. He took Gary Cornish's O, even though Gary Cornish obviously isn't a fantastic fighter. But those wins there probably stick him at number 10 for me. yeah, do you want to say anything about any of that?
No, I can agree with you on that, but I reckon you got a very got a very good top 10 pound for pound.
Yeah, thanks, man. And now let's talk about the knockout of the year. I'm going to go with one that nobody has actually mentioned. I'm guaranteeing it. Nobody's mentioned it. But anyways, I'm going to throw it to you, Ayaz, first. Who are you giving it to?
See, I've got two in the mind. I've got one where Rungvisai beat Gonzalez in the second fight.
Yeah.
And the other one was in Deontay Wilder versus Bermain Stavern.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good knockout, obviously, the Bermain Stavern one, but the only thing I criticised was the fight itself. I think it was expected to happen. I think that, the first one you mentioned there, obviously, Rungvisai knocking out, really, closing the book on any kind of controversy in the first fight where he got the decision, and it was very close. He really closed the book on that with the knockout, and as early and as dominant as what it was. So I think for me, that's probably the better of the two. Now, I've gone with one that's a bit of a wild card. It wasn't for a world title. It was back in May this year, probably one that's been forgotten. It's actually David Benavidez's knockout against Paulie Medina. Did you happen to see that, Ayaz?
I haven't, unfortunately.
Oh, mate, check that out. I swear to God, he must have thrown about 15 punches in about 2 seconds and every single one landed. Unbelievable. One of the most, the most exciting looking knockouts I've ever seen. And I don't mean like, an unconscious, absolutely, need the oxygen and need the stretcher brought in kind of concussive knockout. I'm just talking about that was my favourite knockout. Not that it probably wasn't the most damaging knockout, it just was my favourite one. It looked the best, and it was such a rare thing. I've never seen anybody get knocked out like that before, so for me that was really special. Also, we had him on the show after that win as well, so that kind of put the icing on the cake a little bit. And my fighter of the year, Ayaz, I think you're going to agree with me here, has to be Vasyl Lomachenko.
Yep, no doubt about it. This guy just keeps on improving. He makes people quit on stools. That's how good that's why he's so good.
Yeah, I mean, this year he's had 3 fights, obviously. Jason Sosa took him on. Jason Sosa, he spoke about that fight on our show also. But Jason Sosa, I think they pulled him out. His corner pulled him out in like round 10 or something like that. He also had Mariaga quit on his stool. And most recently, Rogondo quit on his stool. All 3 guys there, former world champions, former, brilliant fighters. They're no mugs, and he's made all 3 of them quit, and even more. But that's just this year. He's on like a 6 quit streak or something, isn't he? Or is it 4 quit streak? I think something like that. But yeah, 3 this year. Absolutely unbelievable. You just, even though he's my pound for pound number 1, this year really definitely elevated him to that status. I mean, he's had a brilliant year, and if I had to give a runner-up to the best year, I'd have to give it to Rungvisai. He didn't make my top 10 because I think his run of opponents before the Chocolatito victories wasn't really impressive, so that's why he's not in my top 10. But those 2 wins there, I mean, Chocolatito definitely was in my top 10, but on the 2 performances that he's had against Rungvisai, it's kind of took him out, but not enough to put Rungvisai in his place, I don't think. I think Rungvisai's got a great fight coming up. If he wins that, then he definitely does get in my top 10, and I'd probably have to push Joshua out of the 10th place. Also, another fighter, if he was more active, I'd definitely have him in the top 10. Gary Russell Jr. His only loss was to Lomachenko. He didn't get stopped, and he's a brilliant fighter as well. I think he's very underrated simply because he's not fighting enough. Yeah, I mean, Charlos, they're doing well. If I had like a top 15, I think maybe the Charlos would be in it, maybe Erislandy Lara. But yeah, it was just a top 10, and that's what we've got. So Lomachenko, our fighter of the year. That's unanimous all round pretty much. And yeah, good knockouts this year. I mean, it's going to be a very hard year to beat next year. As I say, 2017's been absolutely brilliant for fights, not just world title fights, not just domestic fights, but in all levels. I'm talking about fights in the small halls have been absolutely brilliant. Fights, for European titles, for British titles, for even those titles that they knock, like Southern Area titles, even those, those regional titles like the WBC International Belt, stuff like that. There's been some unbelievable fights this year, but of course, the very best fights this year. I mean, what brilliant fights have we had this year, Ayaz, when you actually talk about it? I mean, Klitschko Joshua's definitely up there. I'm not just talking about a brilliant fight in terms of the action or the way it finished, the way it started. I mean, just like we've seen the best versus the best in so many different weight divisions, haven't we? So many different levels to it. Obviously, like I say there, Klitschko, Joshua, Canelo, Triple G. I mean, I don't want to say Mayweather, McGregor, but it was a huge event for boxing. As I say, just a couple of weeks ago, as we mentioned, Rigondo, Lomachenko, there's been so many. What other ones can you think of? Mikey Garcia, Broner goes under the radar.
Yeah, Lawrence Campbell.
Yeah, it was a good fight. I don't want to say Campbell was one of the best, but yeah, that was a good fight. What else have we had? I'm just trying to brainstorm it now, out loud kind of thing. We've had, Terence Crawford in all of his, mainly that fight against Indongo. The reason being is it was 2 unbeaten fighters for all the trinkets at one
Furman
point.
Garcia.
Yeah, Fearon Garcia, that was another brilliant fight. There's just been so many unbeaten fighters taking on other unbeaten fighters at a genuinely world-class level. And it's just been a brilliant year. It's a very, very hard, year to top next year, if it can be done. It's been amazing, it really has. I mean, I wish that Wilder and Povetkin did actually happen. That would have been good. Or Wilder and Luis Ortiz. Obviously, we know what happened there. Wilder hasn't had a great year. Yeah, there would have been so many brilliant fights made. There really was, but we were spoiled in 2017, and I just hope that 2018 can somehow live up to what we saw this year, because it has been a special year, hasn't it, Ayaz?
Oh, yes, definite.
Okay, and that really wraps up all the talking. We've spoke about the fighter of the year. We've spoke about the knockout of the year. We've spoke about our top 10 pound for pound list. We've also spoke about the latest news. We brought you the first interview. We mentioned the reviewing of all the fights that took place last week just before we wrap up this special show. And I mean wrap up with a little bit of a pun intended there as well. We're going to bring in our second and final guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the former WBC, WBO, Ring Magazine and Lineal Middleweight World Champion, Mr. Kelly Pavlik. Kelly, welcome to the show.
Hey, well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure, sir. It's my pleasure. So, Kelly, I just want to really ask you one question regarding your amateur career. Of course, you had 98 fights in total, winning 89 and losing just 9. A really great record there, looking at that. Which, obviously, in that sensational record there, a total of 98 fights. Was you ever tempted to just have 2 more to make it 100?
No, you know what? That's actually a good question. In the amateurs, man, I don't even think we found out till like after a year after I turned pro. We went through my pass book, or not pass book, but the amateur book, and seen that we had 98 fights. I think my trainer knew. I really didn't know. I never paid attention. I had going back, I was actually talking with a buddy about that the other day. I accomplished a lot in a real quick, short period of time, actually, in my amateurs. I won, right towards the end when I was still in the Junior Olympics, I won 2 national titles. And then my second tournament in the open division, I won the under-19s. And then I ended up qualifying for the U.S. Olympic trials also. And I don't even think I was in the open division a year, and then I turned pro. So I didn't have not even a year in the open division before I turned pro. A lot of guys, they made it big. They were qualified in a couple of years in the open division in the amateurs, as were, I didn't. And so the amateurs to me was more so like just trying to get as much experience, and that was my main goal. I really looked more for like a world title instead of the Olympic medals. You know what I mean? I've seen the politics of amateur boxing, and just like you have it in the pros too. And that was one of the main reasons for not sticking around another 4 years like a lot of guys do. Was to say I had like Top Rank and Cameron Duncan, and I had Lou Duba, who was interested in me. I had all these guys knocking at the door just that quick of being in the open division, and say that I stuck around another 4 years and I ended up getting hurt or I got robbed again, like I did against Hanshaw in the Olympic trials. What was to say that didn't happen? So now I wasted 4 years and my stock went down, which could happen. And So I mainly, my big goal with the amateurs was to pay attention to get the experience out of it and fight the guys, fight in the big tournaments, and focus on, turning pro. And, I had a great opportunity with Top Rank, wanting to sign me, and Lou Duva and all that. So, the record, 89-9, it was cool to find out, but, I didn't really pay too much to it.
Yeah, it is, finding the right time to turn pro. We see it happen to a lot of amateurs. It's a really hard decision, like you say there, because it really is like the top of the tree in terms of the amateur game really is going to the Olympics. And if you get unlucky or you get robbed in your case or anything like that, then it's hard to just go back and train for another, 3.5 years in preparation for the next one. So, yeah,
exactly. And it's a fine line. Yeah, there's a real fine line too on that. Also, you got to have some people. A lot of guys are too young to realize where they're at, but you get to have the right people around too. I mean, some guys have a style that's just not going to be made for amateurs. I think my style, like I said, I accomplished a lot just in a short period, but I was hitting hard in the amateurs also. I boxed very, very well. But, so there was a time when you could turn a kid pro, and there was a time also, at 18 years old where you say, let's hold him back a little bit, get more experience, and maybe slowly start working him, into fighting like a pro.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously you turned pro in 2000, the millennium. Your first 14 fights were all knockout wins within 3 rounds, so that was very impressive. Obviously you kept winning, and in 2005, at this point, you were 26-0. You'd been unbeaten for 5 years as a pro. You fought for your first title, the NABF middleweight title, obviously against Zuniga. Now, one thing about Zuniga was that he could punch like a mule. I think everybody knew that. He'd had obviously 16 knockouts from 17 wins at the time. He just had the one loss. It was for a world title. So it was a really hard fight, especially, for your first kind of big proper test, if you like, for a title there. He had one draw as well, I should mention. Now obviously you found out very quickly about Zuniga's his big punch, obviously, finding yourself on the canvas for the first time in your professional career. Now, if you can remember, Kelly, at that very moment, what went on inside your head? Because you got right back up and managed to dominate him for the rest of the fight until a very confusing conclusion in his corner ended the fight. What went through your head when you was on the deck in round 1 there?
No, to be honest with you, that's funny. Like nothing. I was more pissed off. I mean, it was literally a flash knockdown, and it's hard to explain to people what a flash knockdown is. A flash knockdown is like when you get clipped and you're not one bit hurt, but that split second, it feels like somebody grabs you by both your ankles and yanks them from you. You know what I mean? And you go down, you can't help it, but it's nothing that where you're like rocked or dazed. And I was more pissed at that point. There was no urgency in me. There was no worry or anything like that. It happens. It happens to people with good chins, and obviously I proved my chin in my career. So I got up, and my main thing was just to go back, regroup, and stick to the regular game plan that we had. We knew Zuniga was in tremendous shape also. That was what was the biggest part about that. Here's a kid that can hit as hard as he does, and it don't look like it on film. And until you get in there, he's just one of the typical Colombian heavy-handed fighters. The Colombians are notorious for hitting hard. And, we got through it, though. It was more so like, would he have been able to keep up with my conditioning and my power? And, that was the big thing in that fight. But, yeah, it was a flash knockdown, and he got me on it, but nothing that went through. Like I said, I was just more upset with myself at that time.
Yeah, I just rewatched it yesterday. I remember it was like a left hook around the back of the guard that he landed, and ultimately he, his corner pulled him out in round 9. It was a little bit confusing, but we'll leave that there. Obviously, since then you defended the NABF title against Bronco McCart, a man that had previously held a world title and had 3 fights against Winky Wright as well. That's really his main things that he was known for. You became the first man to legitimately stop McCart. After that fight, you had 2 more knockout wins before running into Edison Miranda, a real tough guy. Everybody knows about him all over the world. At this point, you're 30-0 with 27 knockouts. He was 28-1 with 24 knockouts. The one loss coming to Arthur Abraham in a world title fight that went the distance. Now, you became the first man to stop Edison Miranda. The knockout came in round 7. Talk us through that fight, Kelly. What a win.
Yeah, that fight right there going into it, it was kind of funny at the press conference. A lot of people were, Miranda and other people were like bypassing me, and nobody was talking about Kelly Pavlik. And I even commented when I got up to the podium, I said, "Yeah, I was like, I don't even think I'm fighting tomorrow." I forgot. Because nobody was talking. Miranda was more concerned about fighting Jermaine Taylor, and but going into that, the thing that was overlooked was obviously my power. And we knew Miranda could hit. And the big thing with that fight, I seen Miranda knock a lot of people out who tried to get away from him, who tried to move, because he didn't throw regular punches, like boxing punches. I mean, he put a little loop on a lot of his punches, and that's when he caught a lot of people, like them trying to move out the way, and he would catch them with that. So my strategy being, my size and, again, my conditioning and power, I said, excuse my language, I said, fuck it. And I said, how about he's going to have to worry about me, and I'm going to go in there and I'm going to back Miranda up, and I'm not going to let him get a chance to set up on that back leg and fire those big right hands. And that's what we did for most of the fight besides the 5th round. I pushed Miranda back, which nobody's done, and that was, people thought I was absolutely crazy for wanting to do that. And but I proved everybody wrong, and I did put a beating on Miranda. I'm not sure, I don't think he was the same after that. The one loss that he had was against Abraham, which I thought that he absolutely won that fight, hands down. And if that fight wasn't in Germany, that's a different fight. Not only would it have been stopped, but he still would have won on points. But it was. I think that was a big fight. Of course, the Taylor fight was going to be bigger because I won the world title. But without that Miranda fight, there was no Taylor fight. And what made it even more better about it was the fact that after I beat Sartucci, they gave me the medal. The WBC gave me the medal, and I was supposed to be the #1 mandatory. So that meant like my next fight was supposed to be for the world title. And after 7 years of going through and staying undefeated, which is hard, in a professional boxing, I thought that I had the title shot. And then they're like, "Hey, Kel, you got to fight this monster now." I'm going, "No, what do you mean I got to fight Miranda?" Like, it's for the #1 mandatory. I said, "Well, I just fought for the mandatory against Artucci." And so I actually fought for 2 mandatory fights, #1 mandatory. And yeah, that was a tough fight, though. I mean, I took his shots. It was kind of like going and putting on my war outfit and saying, you know what, I hope my vest, could take shots better than his.
And you prevailed there, like you say, a brilliant win there. That win itself got you a shot at the WBC and WBO World Champion, the undefeated, with 1 draw though, just a minor blemish, but still undefeated Jermaine Taylor. Now, a lot of people know that you guys had both fought back in the amateurs. He beat you back in the amateurs. This time it was in the pros. It was for 2 world titles. You was both undefeated. Taylor was also at the time being trained by the legendary Emmanuel Stewart, who predicted a knockout win for his guy. He really, kind of felt that it would be quite an easy win. But the fight itself, you had bit of an awful start, if you don't mind me saying, Kelly. During the fight, you were able to sort of warm into it. You turned the tide round and ultimately knocked Jermaine Taylor out in round 7. Now, at the time of the stoppage, you were behind on all 3 judges' scorecards. Talk us through that fight. The one that really kind of elevated you into a boxing great and permanently entered your name into the history books of the sport?
Yeah, first of all, on that you weren't the only one. I mean, numerous amount of people said, about it was definitely an awful start in the second round. First round, I won. I was winning the second round up until, when I got caught. I thought I was ahead, if not even, but ahead. That's with the knockdown, going into the seventh round. I thought I out-jabbed him, pretty much outboxed him in that fight. The third round, after I knocked him down, or after he knocked me down, I came back and destroyed him in that third round and threw 98 punches. I know that really took everything out of him, too, that third round, at the beginning of it, coming off the fact that he had me out and he blew a lot of energy and he was tired after that second round. Also, I mean, right there kind of zapped all the energy from him, I think, especially the way I came back in that third round. Overall, I mean, again, I thought I was winning the fight. I knew after the end of the third round that the fight was mine, though. I knew that. I wasn't 100% sure how I was going to win, but I knew that I had the fight won. I knew he was notorious for fading in the later rounds, and especially after everything that happened in the early rounds. And I was getting stronger as that fight went on. And it was huge. For a while there, the first couple of years after I won that, I was kind of upset about the second round, and rightfully so. Nobody likes to get dropped. And now that I go back and think about it, I say, if somebody asked me, matter of fact, the local news station did a 10-year anniversary this past September, and the guy goes, Dana Ball, she goes, is there anything that you would have changed about that fight? I said, absolutely not, because that fight wouldn't have made, by some categories, number 9 fight of the decade if I wouldn't have got dropped in the second round. Me getting dropped and getting up off the canvas, unfortunately, made that fight, one of the top middleweight fights of all time. And so now, yeah, it's just funny, the older you get, the way your brain changes on that. And it was a terrific fight. It truly was.
Yeah, it really, really was. And there was a comical incident that followed that. You and your father both left your paychecks in your hotel room. How did you manage that, Kelly?
No, okay. My dad, that is a funny story. First of all, I let it be known that my dad is tight with that, and he always, took the checks to make sure, because usually after a fight, I got post-fight interviews, drug tests, this, that, everything else going on, and my dad can't squeeze a penny through his butt, let alone, something like that. And the whole situation, the way it happened was, everybody came up to the room after the fight. I'm talking about like 30 to 40 people in a small hotel room. And we didn't get done with the post-fight conference and everything else. I mean, it was almost 2 a.m. We were flying out. We were leaving for the airport at 6, too. So everybody was in there, and he was trying to hide that as good as he can, and he had it. He didn't want to lose it. And by the time we kind of started clearing everybody out of the room to get home or get to the airport, which we had to leave at 5 to get to 5:30, he looked in a limo on the way to the airport, and he was like, "Oh shit!" He goes, "You're gonna kill me." And he forgot it because of how busy it was. Like I said, though, I mean, it was nothing to really worry about. Nobody could cash that check. It takes 6-7 days on it, and we just called Top Rank. They canceled it and sent us another one. But yeah, it was kind of funny. Of all people to do that, him to leave the check was that's what was really funny on the inside of it. The inside part.
Now, of course, that fight there, that win over Taylor, there was a rematch clause for Taylor, and he exercised that. But bizarrely, it was a non-title fight. I know that there was something in the contract. It seems a bit bizarre. And also, the weight of it also happened at 164 pounds. It just seems a whole bit random. I mean, what was all that about?
Well, I showed that I didn't care. I mean, it's fight to fight. And, actually, it worked out better for me. My title wasn't on the line. So, but again, I took it. I didn't have to jump up to 164, but I did just to prove, that I would fight anybody and that I was the best in that around that weight. And we went in, and I didn't make 160 even at that time easy at all. So it was kind of nice for me. But I bet you it favored Taylor more. And we went in there, and with that fight, people said that if I didn't knock Taylor out, that there was no way I would beat him. And I showed them wrong on that. You know what I mean? I beat him. I outboxed him and out-hustled him and won the decision. So that made it even better. I was actually happier to win it by decision than to knock him out, And
I want to ask you this question also. Obviously, in the second fight, you beat him over the distance pretty comfortably, and also the fact that you'd had the amateur fight with him, there was obviously a lot of a competitive feeling kind of running through you, obviously, to beat him for the world title in this rematch here. I want to ask you, what was the more difficult fight for you out of the two fights you had in the pros against Jermaine Taylor? Was it the being the underdog and then pulling off the shock upset in many eyes, or would it be moving up in weight a little bit to fight him in a non-title fight and to go 12 rounds this time?
Well, the main thing was it was harder the second fight. It was more difficult. Jermaine was a world champion. He beat a guy in Bernard Hopkins twice, controversial or not. I thought he won slightly in those. But, the fights it's an arguable point. I mean, people think, and I can't blame them for thinking maybe Hopkins won. But the point is, Taylor beat the guy who has the record had the record. I don't know what's going on with Triple G. I didn't pay too much to that. But anyway, yeah, he beat a living legend twice and who had records for the longest title reign in the middleweight division. And, going into that second fight, like I said, nobody thought that I could outbox him. They thought the only way that Kelly thought would beat Jermaine Taylor was by knocking him out. And I showed everybody wrong on that. I mean, that's from the opening bell. I landed a right hand. People got to understand when you knock somebody out, you got to be fast enough to land a punch. So, especially clean. And I, in the second fight, I did, I jumped up. It was the first time me ever going 12 rounds also on top of that. And I did it, fairly good. So I think I proved a lot in that second fight. But what made it harder was, again, Taylor was a smart fighter. He didn't get to where he was at just on natural ability, So in that second fight, him and his trainer, they worked hard in training camp. They studied film, and they changed a lot of things in that fight. And Taylor didn't stay on the ropes, and Taylor didn't put himself in position, a lot of times for me to land a big shot, So that's what made it harder. He fought a lot smarter fight in that second fight also, which made it more satisfying for me to beat him by a decision,
Yeah, absolutely. And then, obviously, you moved down a little bit, lost a couple of those pounds, and then defended your title for the first time. This was against the WBO mandatory challenger, which was Britain's very own Gary Lockett. Gary is well known these days for being a boxing trainer. He also makes regular appearances on Box Nation for the late night international fights. Now, you made Lockett take a knee twice in the second round and once in the third round, which at that moment forced Enzo Calzaghe, of course the father of Joe Calzaghe, to throw the towel in. Yeah, I mean, it was pretty much a easy, quick win for yourself there. Just before we move on from that victory, anything you want to add to that one? I know that Gary Lockett never fought again after that as a pro.
Yeah, Gary Lockett, he's a very cool kid. I have total respect for him, and I'm glad he's doing what he's doing now and doing well. But that fight right there, guys get it. I came off of fighting as Artucci, then obviously Miranda, and then Taylor twice. It was kind of deserving, I guess, to say, to get a fight like that. But I did what I was supposed to do, which a lot of times top guys don't do that. When they make a drop down to fight a guy like that, it's either boring or ugly or, they go to distance. And I give myself credit is because I went in there against an opponent that I was supposed to beat. There was no question about it, and that puts a lot of pressure on you too. I was pretty nervous for that fight because of that reason. Like, I wasn't nervous about losing or anything like that, but I was really had a lot of pressure about performing well. Because that's a big thing when you fight a guy like that, especially coming off the fights with Taylor, was how I was going to look in there and how I was going to beat him. And I was fortunate enough to go in and just obviously be very dominant, and that paid off really good.
And then, of course, came the Bernard Hopkins fight. It was originally at a catch weight of 170. Now, I found that a little bit strange. Obviously, it was also a non-title bout. Bernard was coming off his loss to Joe Calzaghe, and one thing that you had in common that you touched on earlier is you both had back-to-back rematches, if you like, with Jermaine Taylor. You beat Taylor twice, and he, being Bernard, lost to Taylor twice. And at the time of this fight, you were 34-0. You'd gone longer than 8 years unbeaten as a pro. It all, unfortunately, seemed to unravel for you on this particular night at the Boardwalk Hall. Walk us through that fight if you can, Kelly.
Well, there was a lot for that fight, and a lot of it's well documented. And Garcia, a funny story, how small the boxing world is that, Garcia was a big part of that, and he ended up becoming my trainer at the end. But taking nothing away from Bernard, and I seen him at the Canelo Triple G fight, and I have the most respect for Bernard Hopkins and his career, and I think that he is definitely guaranteed a Hall of Famer and just a tremendous fighter. And it was an honor to even be in the ring against him. But going into that fight, I sparred literally. I guess let me start, if you don't mind. I got to start from the beginning on this because I never really touched on it, and now I think I can because I'm not making a comeback and I'm retired for good. So this don't make or break anything for me. The reason why the Hopkins fight originally happened was I was supposed to fight Paul Williams, and Paul Williams, who was actually a welterweight, even though he was taller than me, the fight just kept falling through. And for some reason, there was rumors going around, talk that I kept backing out of the fight. And I didn't back out of the fight. There would be no reason why I would run from a welterweight, but yet jump 2 weight classes to fight a living legend. You know what I mean? It's kind of like wiping your ass before you shit. Don't make no sense. You know what I mean?
I like that.
Yeah, it truly don't. I'm going to run from a welterweight, but I'm going to jump up 2 weight classes to fight Hopkins. And again, this was this was almost 10 years ago too now. So this wasn't Hopkins who fought Joe and Kovalev. So with that being said, there was no big fight out there, and you got to understand the pickle that I was in. I have these people saying that I was afraid to fight Paul Williams, and then I had the injury, or the staph infection for Paul Williams, and and it was in the Sports Illustrated and Ring magazine. They even showed the picture of my hand and me at the Cleveland Clinic. So now and then I fought Gary Lockett. So I couldn't take another Gary Lockett type fight because people were already snickering around about me ducking Paul Williams, and now what would they be saying if I fought another Gary Lockett? So I was tied up there, and believe me, I pay attention to what people say, and I wanted to be an all-time great middleweight. So I was really caught in a hard spot. So I talked with Cameron Duncan and Top Rank, and they said, well, I think the only possible matchup out there right now for you is Bernard Hopkins. And I said, all right, dangerous fight. Bernard Hopkins is unbelievably crafty and everything else and smart. I had the confidence that I beat Taylor twice, so who beat him twice? So going into that, I say, screw it, we'll take the fight. Then they say, well, it's at 170. It's going to be at a catch weight, 170. And I said, I haven't even had a fight at super middleweight. I had the second Taylor fight, but that was still 4 pounds less than the super middleweight limit. I said, and now they want me to jump up to 170? And actually, the original was supposed to be 172. It was, but we got it down to 70. And I said, you know what? Screw it. Let's do it. And because I was in that big of a jam that I didn't want the lashing of fighting another, I don't use the term bum with fighters, but a non-significant fight, and I didn't want the backing out, or supposedly backing out of the Paul Williams fight. So we took it, and along with that being said, I ended up getting bursitis in my elbow. And eventually, shortly after that, I had tendonitis. So I literally sparred 3 times for the Hopkins fight, for the entire training camp, 3 times. And I remember there was talks of it, and actually I was just talking with Bruce Champler at the Lomachenko fight, and we brought that up, like what could we have done different about that. And if I would have backed out or postponed that fight, it would have been devastating to my career. First of all the Youngstown fans had already bought tickets. And then by backing out of it, again, now, like what I just mentioned with the Lockett fight and the Paul Williams fights, backing out, I was kind of like, if I pull out this now or postpone this fight, it's over. I mean, there's nothing I can do. So I sucked it up, and then we get to Atlantic City now. We get there Wednesday, and on Thursday, the day before the weigh-in, this is where Robert Garcia comes into play. I end up coming down with bronchitis, and I'm in my hotel room, and we're trying to figure out how we're gonna clear this up by Saturday without the Hopkins camp finding out. So we had a doctor there, and he says, get an inhaler. And this doctor is not familiar with boxing. It was just a regular family practice doctor. And we called down to our cornerman goes, you might want to call down to the commission and see, though. So we called on the commission, and we asked if it's okay to get an inhaler for like an asthma inhaler to break up the congestion in my chest. And they say absolutely not, because there is a steroid in it, and it will show up in the drug test. So now we had to figure out what we were going to do. We ended up getting an oral prescription for the bronchitis, but we put it in Stephen Luevino's name, who was the co-main event, who was trained by Robert Garcia. And Robert still remembers that was the first thing he mentioned when I went to him to go train. And we put it in Luevino's name so that way the Hopkins camp wouldn't find out. Because in boxing, you always try to find out everything to get the edge. So just overall, it was just bad timing for that fight. And fight night, I was so lethargic. I mean, I seen things that he was doing, and I wanted to counter it. And I remember telling Jack, and it might even have been on HBO when they show us in the corner. I remember saying, like, I'll get loose, man. I'm tight. And then after the second round, I went back and I told Jack in the corner, I go, you know what? I'm going to warm up. Finally, after the third round, it was just one of them nights where I didn't want to get stopped. I didn't want to get knocked out, So it was just like, try to get through the 12 rounds. And it was the longest 12 rounds that could possibly ever be. And one of my worst fights. But unfortunately, the outcome was, he beat me hands down, and I still learned a little bit from it. Again, it's hard to learn a lot from something when I wasn't at my best, and I didn't, like if I was at my best and I just had a bad night, there's a lot to go back to the drawing board and work on, but I couldn't beat myself up on it too much, and I didn't. So we, at that, we leave it with that, and you're like one of the first people that I've ever, that's a true story, and you could ask Robert Garcia, again, like I said, that was documented, but it's something that you got to deal with. I mean, it's not a setback. I didn't lose to Gary Lockett, I lost to a Hall of Famer,
Yeah, no,
one of the best, one of the best of all time. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So be it.
Thank you for the exclusive there, by the way, I must say. Obviously, that fight was a 12-round fight. There were some punches after the bell, mainly on Bernard's part. It looked like maybe you wouldn't, be shaking hands or hugging each other moments after. But after the decision was announced, Bernard came over, and I remember hearing him say to you, from what I could hear, what the mic picked up, he said, "Don't let this fight destroy you. This will either make you or break you." The way he was talking was a tiny little bit patronising, I suppose, at the time. Did you let that fight, make you or break you mentally or destroy you physically in any way?
No, and of course there was rumblings of that it did. You know what I mean? And for a guy who, I finished my career at 40-2, which was a phenomenal record. But no, it didn't. And Bernard showed a lot of class, and that's one thing that he didn't get, a lot of in his career, because he liked to make a lot of noise at the press conferences and everything. He didn't do it at mine, too. That was another thing that was kind of weird for us. He didn't talk any mess before the fight. We found that weird, but he was very, he didn't have to do that after that fight. And that just showed what type of person and the class act that he is. And, of course, I listened, you know what I mean? And he said a lot of things that was very true. So, there's a guy there, I think, that he does really good commentating, but he also could be a great trainer one day if he ever decided to do it.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. He didn't talk any trash in the press conference, and a little bit of me probably thinks it may.
I think that was the only fighter that he never did, huh?
Yeah, he was coming off the loss to Joe Calzaghe, wasn't he? And he did say in the build-up to that fight famously that he'd never lose to a white guy, and he did. And then he was fighting another white guy in yourself. Maybe he just didn't want to jinx it. Who knows?
Yeah.
But obviously after that fight, because it wasn't for the belts, you'd moved up for it. You were still the WBC and WBO champion at 160. And, you went back down, defended your belts. Obviously, going back down in weight like that sometimes doesn't pan out well. But just 4 months later, you took on Marco Antonio Rubio, who at the time was 43 wins into his career with 37 knockouts. He had 4 losses and 1 draw. He had more knockouts than you'd had fights at the time, Kelly. And you got in there and made his corner pull him out on his stool after 9 rounds of being dominated. Brilliant win once again.
Yeah, that fight right there I've been talking about a lot recently, and mainly why I've been talking about that fight. First of all, coming back down from 170 and defending my title, which you like you just said too, you don't see many people do that or do it successfully, and I did. But the reason why I've been talking about that so much recently was just a couple years later after that, he went in and was the first person to stop David Lemieux, who for some odd reason is still relevant in the middleweight division, and I don't understand it. I truly don't. I even mentioned it on my podcast. But he stopped him, and Lemieux was 25-0 with 25 knockouts at that time. And again, that was 2.5 years maybe, a roundabout after I beat Rubio. Rubio was a very strong fighter, tough, but I neutralized all that in that fight and dominated it. I thought it should have been stopped actually a round or two before that. And, but, that's why I use that. Everybody still talks about, for some reason, Lemieux's this great fighter, and he hits this hard, but, he obviously didn't hit that hard to stop Rubio, and actually he got stopped. So I kind of use that as a measuring stick for why David Lemieux is still relative in the top 10 of boxing in the middleweight division. But I guess when a weight class really, other than Jacobs and Triple G and Canelo now, who just recently moved up, you got to have room somewhere in the top 5. So, but Rubio, I think that was a good fight to come in there again against a very sturdy opponent, but win it very convincingly. And that just goes to show when people say, Hopkins took everything out of them, they must not really follow the boxing game very close, because Lemieux was one of the very highly ranked and touted middleweight at that time. And when Rubio beat him, and what I did to Rubio, literally the next 4 months later, somebody that was, destroyed mentally from a loss like that wouldn't have done that to a Rubio.
Yeah, not a chance, not at all. When you were just naming the current 160 top guys, I see that you failed to mention Billy Joe, the guy that really beat the devil out of Lemieux, if you like, the other night, of course.
Yeah. Well, going on that, and I mentioned that, as I said earlier on my show, Saunders was good, and I'm not taking nothing away from him. I just think that people are rushing way too quick. Again, he beat Lemieux, who I don't see how Lemieux's even in the top 10 right now still. He's got some moves, but I'm not saying that he won't be a top guy in that weight class. I just personally don't see him right now beating a Triple G, and definitely Canelo. And people say, "Oh, Canelo can't box." Canelo could fight. Canelo could box, and Danny Jacobs, you still got it that way. I think a good fight for him right now, his next fight would be against like a Charlos. I don't think Charlos is going to be a big threat at middleweight division as long as the Triple G's and Danny Jacobs and Canelo's are there. And I think that would be a good fight to really see where Saunders is at. If he beats Charlo convincingly, then you say, you know what, this guy is legit. So
yeah, certainly.
I think, and I hate to say it because, again, he may be the next future of the weight class. But for what I'm seeing, I got to see more against a top, a higher level guy. So Lemieux was tailor made for him for that fight.
Yeah, I agree on that. I mean, like you say, there's a lot of good fights for him out there. I like all those fights that you mentioned there. There's a real mixing pot of talent at once.
Yeah, because Charles is just coming up too, and up to the middleweights actually from junior middleweight.
Yeah.
So
Jamal Charlo, that was.
Yeah, and I don't, like I said, I'm not that big on him at the middleweight division. But again, it's too early to even really say that. I'm going to, but so I think that would be a good matchup for them because for Charlo, Saunders is not a big power puncher at all. So you don't have to really worry about that fact of it. You know what I mean? And I think that would be a good test to see where he's at.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I don't want to really go off topic here because obviously we're here to talk about you. But I mean, we got Billy Joe here that beat Lemieux, really schooled him. Took the O from Chris Eubank Jr., who I have to admit is pretty untested, really. But he seems to look very good. Everybody thinks he's going to be the next best thing. Obviously, he took the title away from Andy Lee, who's another guy that can just switch your lights out in one shot. So I don't know. He's took quite a few guys O's as well. He's really won every title, literally from like area level in the UK, which is really low level, right up to English and I think maybe he might have skipped British, but he went on to European and obviously worlds now. He literally has won every title available to him, really, and kept his O for all that.
And listen, you got to understand, I'm a huge fan of UK fighters because, from England and all over. I got a big following, too. So, it's like the mutual respect thing, and it's awesome. Don't get me wrong, but I called this the other day when he was fighting. I texted my co-host, James Dominguez, and he agreed, too. He goes, holy shit. He goes, I didn't even think of that. And it was that Saunders fights identically to a Sergio Martinez. I mean, almost every punch they throw, the way they throw them, and the moves is just like each other. But I just think that Saunders is a very he's an unpolished Sergio Martinez right now. You know what I mean by that? How I'm putting it? So,
yeah, totally.
But if you go back and watch that, their styles are identical. I mean, they even throw the jab on an orthodox fighter. They even throw their jab the same way when they're moving to the left of the orthodox fighter. They throw the jab up over top of the shoulder. So,
I'll have to certainly look out for that. But no, I like that observation. It's certainly, a good one and a good man to be fighting like, of course. Sergio was a brilliant fighter. But yeah, moving back to what we were talking about there, you'd just beaten Marco Antonio Rubio, then you went on to fight Miguel Espino, a guy that wasn't really much of a big name, I suppose. You knocked him out in the 5th round after having him down twice in round 4. That would be your last successful world title defence, which was your 3rd successful defence. Then, finally, the fight happened between yourself and Paul Williams, but due to... Well, sorry, it didn't happen. It was supposed to happen, but due to some...
the second time it was...
the second time. Yeah. No, but due to some antibiotic reaction that you were on at the time, your body reacted terribly to him. You nearly died. Another shocking story in a brilliant fighter's life. It seems to just riddle these crazy situations where people nearly losing their lives seem to just riddle great fighters' lives. Can you talk a little bit about that, Kelly? What really happened there? It seems crazy.
Yeah, that was that's why my higher power, what really makes you, or could make some people believe in it and really get strong with it. I ended up, it started off as a staph infection, but it was like a scab, and I had it through just the 2 months of training. Never paid attention all the years I fought. I had a little scab on my knuckle, and I just kept going to training. The same. I washed my hand wraps once a week, and the gloves, we didn't wash them. It's a boxing gym, and this little tiny scab turned into a staph infection, and of course, I went to a local doctor in Youngstown, and it's not picking on Youngstown. It's just, you got to find the top hospitals when you start getting, I realized a little too late, you got to pick the top hospitals or somewhere close, or even if it's far away to go to when you have something as serious as staph or any other illness. With that being said, then it turned into, we went there and they kind of screwed up on it, and then surgery. So then it turned into MRSA, MRSA. And so then they put me on a PICC line and oral antibiotic. And it took a while for that reaction to really come through, though. It was probably about 2.5, 3 weeks into being on the medication. And I started getting a reaction to it, like I was getting a fever. And I looked at my dad and my mom and everybody else, and I said, how the hell am I getting a fever? How am I getting sick when I'm on like 2 of the strongest antibiotics that anybody could be on, And finally it got real bad the next day. And what's funny where it comes into play was I was at my house and we were supposed to go up. I had an appointment to go all the way up to Cleveland to check on my hand. It wasn't the infection doctor or nothing. It was the hand doctor who did the second surgery on my hand. And I was so sick, and we had a new guy coming out to change the medications. That's what they were thinking may have been the problem. And if that guy would have came and brought the new dosage, I probably would have died right there on the spot. And also, my dad could easily have said, hey, you know what? He's not feeling good. We're not going to put him in the car and drive an hour north, to Cleveland. And but my dad's, he goes, you know what, it's probably better off that we go up there because something ain't right. So at least he'll be in a hospital. And they took me up there, and we went to the hand doctor, and I got into his office, and I laid on the bed, the medical beds, and I just started falling asleep. And I guess I was already asleep, and my dad told me what happened. The doctor looked at my dad and said, he's got to go upstairs. And they took me up, and the next thing I know, I wake up, and it's 3 days after, or 2 days after I entered, and I had the red man syndrome in my ears. I looked like the elephant man. I was swelled up, and it was a very close call. I don't play around with that no more now.
No, not at all. It's really, really horrible incident.
Yeah, if my dad would have said, stay home. Yeah, if my dad would, that's what I'm saying. If my dad would have said, hey, stay home, I will get you in tomorrow around here or something like that, I probably wouldn't be here.
Yeah, it's a real close call. It's Yes, I mean, I've done loads of these interviews with people that have been in situations where they've nearly died. It's mad. But like I say, thank the Lord.
Yeah, yep, that's
and
what you
father,
believe.
and your father.
Yeah.
Now, after that, the next fight after that incident was the Sergio Martinez fight, right?
Yes.
Okay, so after such a crazy medical thing like that, you decided to come straight back in against Sergio Martinez.
Yeah, I'm not sure where those fell. I'm sorry to interrupt on that, because when I was talking earlier, I know before one of the fights with Williams, because the Paul Williams fight fell through twice,
and
that was before the Hopkins. I'm not sure. The second one had to have been before the Martinez fight, though. Yeah, but the Martinez fight, that was another one. Now, again, this is going to sound like the Hopkins, kind of. But this one, again, they mentioned it, though. That, the commentators mentioned it during the fight about how the struggle I had of making the weight for that. And, about the treadmills and stationary bikes in my hotel room. That fight there, Martinez was slick fighter. And, but in the middle rounds, I controlled the middle rounds. Actually, I believe I was up on the scorecards going into the 9th round when the fight turned. And that was a matter of just hitting a wall. I hit the wall in the 9th round, and people say about the cut. The cut was so bad, and that had to do from the dehydrating and rehydrating. I don't think it would have mattered who the cut man was. For that fight, I forget how many cc's of adrenaline they put into it. It didn't even slow it down at all. But that 9th round. But even if the cut wasn't there, he probably would have done the same thing. You know what I mean? Nothing I could do. I think now that I go back and I talk about that fight, I was always worried about. Again, I worried more about what people were going to say than what I should have worried about. And I think I should have just came in, like a pound heavy or even a pound and a half heavy. God, guys do it all the time now. And if they would have, and they could have took the belts and stripped me of my titles, because it was my last fight at middleweight anyways. You know what I mean? I wasn't ever going to fight at middleweight after that. And so what would have hurt me if they took my belts? You know what I mean? And, I think, that's something I was talking with Bruce Trampler, again, just 2 weeks ago at the Lomachenko fight. And he agreed, he goes, yeah, but we can't go back and redo it. And, like I said, the middle rounds, I got a little spurt there. And you watched the fight. Actually, my one buddy watched it. He said he never really watched it after the first time because I lost. And he even says how controlling I was in the middle rounds of that fight. But, again, there's nothing you could do about it. The weight was an issue. And, yes, maybe it was just better that I still, personally, I know I went down to 160 and I did what I could do. And I don't know if I would have felt, even to this day, that good knowing that if I would have won at 161 and a half, that I had that pound and a half difference. And if I would have won, how happy would I still have been knowing that I came, that I didn't make the weight? You know what I mean? Because to me, that makes a big difference. That pound and a half makes a huge difference. And that could have made a huge difference if I would have won that fight and if I would have done that. So I guess the moral of it is, would I have been happy if I came in at 161 and a half and I beat him? Would I be happy today? Because in the back of my head, I'd be like, well, it was kind of like cheating. You know what I mean? Or do I still live with the fact that, well, why didn't I just come in at 161 and a half? I wasn't going to fight at middleweight anymore anyways, and I literally just took everything out of me to make the weight. You know what I mean? It's one of those situations where it's kind of a no-win for me. But, I probably wouldn't have been satisfied, beating him, but weighing 161 and a half.
Yeah, hindsight's a thing which can drive you mad at times. What I do want to just point out there is that was Sergio Martinez's second fight at 160. He was coming off a loss to Paul Williams at the time. Obviously, the fight went 12 rounds, a fight where You know, Martinez did pretty well in spurts of it. I think, as you say, you were good in the middle rounds as well. You dropped him in the 7th round as well. I want to ask you also, this was obviously your second loss and final loss of your career. How tough of a loss was this compared to the Hopkins one? What one was worse for you?
This one, because it was in my weight class, and again, I what I just explained, like that even right after that bothered me. Like, it was kind of like with the team, my team. I think that we should have had a bigger sit down. We should have got that through a little more, especially halfway through the camp when we were just struggling, with the weight. The 160 at that age, at 29, 28 years old, it's hard to keep that up for that long. Almost 10 years. The older you get, it's nature. You know what I mean? It's what happens. It gets harder to make weight, and I don't know. It didn't. It bothered me more because the Hopkins fight, I knew it was out of my reach, out of my control, and the Martinez fight, knowing how good I did, and it was actually easy in the middle rounds. And then, a year after, Martinez is good friends and trained with a good friend of mine, Roger Romo. And I thought the knockdown was a flash knockdown, and I guess he told Roger that it wasn't, that he really got hurt from that. And I was the hardest puncher that he ever fought. And Sergio is a really nice guy, truly is. I got a lot of respect for him, but it was harder on me than the Hopkins fight, because I felt like we could, as a team, done a little bit different before. Made some different changes. But again, on the flip side of that, where I say, if we would have said, screw it, let them take the belts, we're coming in at 61 and a half, and I would have won, I don't know how good I would have felt still.
Yeah.
So,
like I say, hindsight.
Just a tough fight.
Tough.
Tough all around. Everything about it.
And then, of course, you were set to move up to super middleweight, as you said there. That was going to be your last fight at 160. However, at the time, it emerged that you were battling an addiction to alcohol. When roughly did that problem start for you? And when, how long did it take you to get over it? When did you get over it? How difficult was it to overcome? I know that you visited rehab for help as well.
Yeah, it was just a phase of fun. You know what I mean? And I got out of that a little bit. So
you then, of course, returned to the ring after being inactive for the longest period in your career, which was 13 months. Because I want to tell. Well, I may as well tell you now. You were very, very active, and there's one question I've got at the end about how active that you were. Like I say there, the longest layoff, 13 months. You returned against the unbeaten 21-0 with 16 knockouts, Alfonso Lopez. You won the fight via a majority decision over 10 rounds. Since then, you fought 3 more times, defeating Aaron Jacko in 2 rounds, Scott Sigmund in 7 rounds. Go on, jump in.
Yeah, sorry about that. That Lopez fight, it was closer. I mean, I think that was above the 168 class too, and we went into that one, and it was a good fight. I mean, I won it convincingly, and but what's her name? Bird. She was. Everybody else had it, unanimous. Me by, I want to say like 8 rounds, and she was the one who had it a draw. So I don't know as far as the majority goes on that. Yeah, because actually, when that whole thing went down with the Triple G Canelo fight, and with her, they pulled up this big sheet on like notable fights that she did, and mine was one of them against Lopez, like how bad of a scoring it was, and I seen that and I was like, oh my god. But yeah, Lopez, that was another fight though where we fought above the super middleweight limit.
Yeah, like I say, a good win, but like I say, a bit of a tough fight to come back to, really. A guy that was 21-0, obviously, coming off a layoff like you had because you were very active. Like you say, they're a bit of a dodgy card, one of the judges, no surprise. Since then, you fought 3 more times, like I say, defeating Aaron Jacko in 2 rounds, Scott Sigmund in 7 rounds, and Will Rosinski by unanimous decision over 10 rounds in what would be your last appearance in a boxing ring. Now, I've got to ask you, Kelly, a lot of people believe that you still had something to offer, that you perhaps retired prematurely. As I say, you were a pro for 12 years, which isn't really the longest amount of time, but I think what some people forget is the fact that you were ridiculously active during that time. 42 fights in 12 years, which is the equivalent to 7 fights every 2 years, which is very active, especially at the level that you boxed at. But since retiring, over 5 years ago now, have you ever at any point been tempted to come back, and if so, when?
No lie, I got the itch here and there. There was all these speculations and everything for years, the 5 years now, and even then, and I could tap on exactly what came about. After the Lopez fight, I pulled out of a fight in Youngstown because it was negotiated horribly. And it was kind of out of Top Rank's hands, that promotional, because the fight was going to be in Youngstown. And the other people were kind of like co-promoting it for Top Rank. And it came down to the point of, like, I had no fight contract and we're 2 weeks out from a fight. And I was really pissed about it. And, it was kind of inside, and I don't want to, like, talk too much about it, but I was just very upset the way it all came down and went about. And so I pulled out. I mean, it was just that simple. I wasn't going to be a part of it, and I wasn't going to help assist these people in making extra money pretty much off of me. I was too far advanced in the career. Usually that happens to 2 guys who are up and coming or already like journeymen, you know what I mean? And I wasn't that guy, so I wasn't falling for it. I wasn't going to have it. And then Top Rank came, though, and they kind of had enough, too. And not so much with me, but I just think the whole scenario in one. And they gave me an ultimatum after that. And the ultimatum was that I'm going to go to California and train with Robert Garcia, or that they're going to freeze me, and I'm not going to fight. So I kind of had, at that point, it took a lot out of me because I have, usually when you up and leave to go away to a training camp is at the beginning of your career. Like when you don't have kids, you're not a world champion, and you don't have a shitload of money in your account. You know what I mean? That's when, like, you go away for training. And here I had 2 young kids, and I was world champion. I was a 3-time world champion for 3 years, and I had a bundle of money. Or I have a bundle of money in my account, and it took a lot out of me, but I did it. And I must say, when I went to California to train, it was unbelievable being with Robert Garcia and learning, different things. At first I was hard-headed. I was used to one thing, and in my head I was saying, well, what else is somebody going to be able to show me? That ego thing, like, I've seen it all. I fought the best. I have world titles. Who's going to show me what I don't know? Well, I was a little surprised once I got out there, and it was truly neat, and it was a great experience. And I fought Aaron Jacko, which was not even a Gary Lockett. Then I came back and fought Scott Sigmund now, and I was gone for, at that time, already like 4 months straight. 4.5 months straight for my kids, and then I fought Rosinski, and it was kind of like, wow, like, I understand I got a new trainer, but at this stage of my career, I'm fighting these guys, and then we had the big opportunity came. Now, mind you, at this time, I'm already kind of, the kids are giving me, really having a hard time with me leaving, and it was just getting really hard at that stage. And I was kind of losing a little bit. I was pro 12 years, but also you mentioned about the amount of fights. I mean, Miguel Cotto just retired now, and he only has 5 more fights than I do. And he turned pro the same exact year I did, same time that I did. And so I did have a lot of fights. In 12 years in the sport of baseball, they consider a guy a veteran and that his time's pretty much over, in baseball. So can you imagine boxing? Everybody ages differently, and it's the way it is. 12 years is a long time, and to get hit in the head. And I just the Andre Ward fight came about, and I was really stoked about that, and I was really pumped up, and I really started getting motivated again. Unfortunately, Andre Ward ended up getting the fight got canceled, and he had that shoulder surgery, and he was out for a good amount of time. There was actually not even a meaningful fight out there for at least another year. I mean, a lot of guys were tied up in contractual agreements and fights, and I just said, that's it. I'm truly done. And again, with all the rumors, speculations of why, I haven't had a punch a time clock or throw a punch in 5 years, and I'm doing things. I got plenty of investments. It was just time to walk away. Have my health. I'm able to spend time with the kids and play football with them and go to the gym myself and power lift now and do other things. The itch, yes, it came there, especially when Triple G was brought up and this and that, because I'm 35 and it's, but even back, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it was, I get the itch here and there, but it would be just something as simple as going to the gym and hitting the bag, and it would be gone. And I stuck to, the fact that I'm done. A lot of these guys stick around way too long, and they lose 2 or 3 fights. A lot of people just remember, the fact of them losing badly and looking horrible. And that was pretty much the reasoning why. I mean, again, 40-2, I wanted to go out on a good note. 12 years, and I made promises to people, close people to me, that I would be retired at 30, and that was pretty much it, though. And the Ward fight, even win or lose, I really would have been contemplating retiring shortly after that.
Yeah. No, I'm happy to hear you say there that you retired on your own terms, so to speak, didn't take much punishment really and go on too long like many a boxer does, and to remain content all this time, it's a brilliant thing. So I admire you for that. Coming down to the last couple questions now, really, I just want to ask you, why were you so active in your career, Kelly? Was it something that you personally felt was best for you? Was it to avoid ring rust? What was the main reason?
You know what? That's another good question. I that was kind of up to Top Rank. I had Cameron Duncan as manager, and Cameron, I don't care what anybody says. I mean, he was one of the best guys to have. They put me in tough fights coming up and to test, especially when you're, it's hard. And now that I'm more involved in the sport, and I'm going to eventually start training guys actually in the spring or summer, I'm going to open up my own boxing gym. I just bought a weightlifting gym, so I'm going to be busy with this stuff. But now that I'm on the other side of it, I pay a lot of attention to it, and it's hard for these handlers when you get a guy who has a lot of power, okay, and he's knocking a lot of people out, because when you're bringing them up and you're trying to bring them up the right way, you got to be careful, because you want to see this guy also go to distance too, see like how his stamina is and how he reacts when he goes past 2 rounds and he's not used to it. And that was a hard job for Top Rank and Cameron Duncan, you know what I mean? Because they had to match me and find experienced guys where I'm still inexperienced, but who could, go to distance with me. But they kept me moving. And my job at that time was sit there, be ready. When they tell me I'm going to fight, make sure I get my 2-month training camp in, and that was pretty much the gist of it. And they did a great job. So and I liked it. Don't get me wrong. Staying active was big, but see now the other side of it too, what I mentioned earlier. A lot of guys got their title shots after only like 5 years, 4.5 years of being pro. Now for me, that was kind of hard though, going 7 years and fighting that much, because in professional boxing, no matter what, anything can happen on any given night. And especially the longer you go, the chances of something happening is, even better of going wrong. And so it was kind of stressful for that stretch, though, like 7 years until I get a title shot, and making sure I stay undefeated and everything else. But that was kind of my, I just sat there and kept myself prepared. And when they said fight, I fought.
Yeah, credit to you, man. Credit to you. And I want to ask you this question also. All in all, Kelly, are you happy with how the your career panned out, all of it? And it's kind of like two questions in one. If you could go back and change something about your career, what would it be, if anything?
Yeah, I'm 100%. Again, I said earlier, I didn't even realize that Cotto, his last fight, again, he has 47 fights or 48 fights, and I had 42, and he was pro 5 years longer than me. And to finish at 40-2 and fight the guys and have 2 losses to the 2 guys that I had, you know what I mean? That's not bad at all. I'm more than satisfied with it. If I could go back and change, I guess. Now that I think about it, and the older you get, the little wiser you get. The Hopkins fight, maybe shouldn't have worried about what people would say, and maybe postpone that, and move it back. Not cancel it, but just postponed it. The Martinez fight, I don't know if I would have touched that. Maybe you can't go back and change it, but maybe just move up to super middleweight from the get-go and not even fight that fight. But the fights define the career, though, too. So I guess without those fights, No,
absolutely. And also, I want to ask you who hit the hardest in your time as a pro, not just in fights, but it could be sparring. Who was the guy that hit the hardest out of all the guys you mixed it with?
Oh shit! Hands down, Miranda. I mean, I still feel some of them punches. So, Miranda hit hard. Zuniga, heavy. He was a different type of hard puncher. Again, Zuniga was just a really heavy-handed, and that means if he threw a jab and hit you in the shoulders, you felt it through your whole body. But Miranda was definitely the hardest. Certain guys that were known to have good power, like Martinez, he didn't, to me, have much at all. And there was a lot of guys. Taylor was strong, but obviously he caught me. He just caught me in a good spot. Anybody catches anybody where he caught me, it's going to make their legs go a little bit. But I'd definitely say Miranda.
And who would you say was the best opponent that you ever shared a ring with? I'm guessing it's going to probably be either out of Hopkins or Martinez, or you might surprise me with somebody else.
No, I honestly, overall skill-wise, I would have to say Taylor. I mean, what he's done in Taylor fight. I mean, you even go back to when people say that after I beat him, he wasn't the same, and look what he did to Carl Froch. I think that was how many fights after, or I don't know how long after, 2 years maybe, or a year and a half after I beat him. The thing about that fight with Froch was if Taylor just takes one more knee, he probably could have afforded to take one more knee. He was so far ahead on points that he still may have won that fight. But him, and then I'd have to say Hopkins, because the thing about Hopkins, and I use him as a big thing on my podcast show when we talk about like footwork and everything else. People think like good footwork is like flashy, dancing around the ring and moving around, and that's not. Like Bernard Hopkins probably had the best footwork, and I say a kid like Mikey Garcia right now. Footwork is like where they can move just a little bit and take everything away from you. Like Hopkins was good at when you went to go throw a punch, he would hurry up, like jump in and smother it, or take a step, just a small little step, inches and angles, and have you out of position. He'd be in position, and take the power off your punches. He threw with everybody. He was really good with that, and people don't realize that. It wasn't so much him moving as much as it was the placement of his feet, when he do that. So I would have to say overall, I know like skill-wise, but if you take his skill, athleticism, and along with his strategy and his brain, his ring smarts, he's up there, him and Taylor.
And which would you say was your best win? Maybe your most satisfying win? I'm guessing probably the first fight with Taylor.
Yeah, it's up in the air between that and the second Taylor. Again, there's notable ones that nobody really looks at. I still, because of like the Lemieux factor and then coming off the Hopkins loss, the Rubio fight was still a big one because the pressure on me fighting back in my hometown after that. And everything else that was just going along with it, and to be able to go in there and perform the way I did in that fight, that I thought that was really big. Obviously Miranda, that was a big one because again nobody gave me a chance for that one either.
Yeah, for sure. And I know that since retiring, obviously you've kept very interested in the sport still. I know that you follow it as much as ever. Who are you, enjoying watching these days? I'm guessing you're probably, paying attention mainly to the middleweight division, or no, in fact, you're probably looking at all the divisions. Who do you like watching the most at the moment, Kelly? Who's some of your top fighters to watch? Yeah,
that's really another good question. Being having a podcast show now and doing that, being part of the media, this year, 2017 was a phenomenal year for boxing, and I hope that 2018, carries the same weight. It is great matchups and everything. I say right now the welterweight division is just loaded with talent. My God, I mean, you could have 4 fights in that division and set boxing for a year. You know what I mean? You got Spence, who I enjoy watching. You got Crawford now, who's in a right around the 40, 47. He's debating on where he's going to stay at and where he's going to move to. Lomachenko, I personally, and I had this argument with my co-host, I have him number 1 because he beat Rigondeaux as easily as he did. And Rigondeaux, before that fight happened, they were the 2 most talented fighters probably ever stepped foot in the ring, and everybody had a seesaw battle. And what Lomachenko did was, of course, there was all the excuses after, like he was bigger and Rigondeaux was old and this and that. But Lomachenko, I think what he's doing is just fun to watch him. The heavyweight division is kind of coming back a little bit now. I think it's getting interesting with the Ortiz, Wilder, and Joshua. I think the light heavyweight now with I'm glad to see Kovalev. Everybody was coming down on him like they do. The first fight with Andre Ward was a draw, and then it was a controversial one. I gave it to Kovalev, but it could have went to Ward, and then he loses the second fight the way he does to Ward, and everybody's like, I told you Kovalev's a bum and all this. But he came back in a fight after, and he fought a guy that he was supposed to beat, but he did it convincingly and looked sharp. And now they're talking about him with that Bivol or Bivol, maybe a future matchup I think is going to be huge. And you got that European, the Eastern European, who's moving to heavyweight, Usyk or something like that.
Yeah, he's a cruiserweight champion right now.
Yeah, but they're talking about he's getting ready to make that move to heavyweight. So again, Mikey Garcia, who's in the mix now. I mean, you may have a matchup with him and Loma, or maybe eventually somewhere along the line at 140.
Yeah,
so,
he's just signed to fight Lipinets, who just picked up one of the titles that Terence Crawford just vacated at 140. So yeah, he's trying to become a 4-weight world champ there.
Exactly, and who's a very talented fighter and one of the most underrated champions right now, I think. But so I mean, just with all those names right now and the possibilities, it's really exciting. I favor right now because I think he's the pound for pound Lomachenko after that last fight. But again, if a Spence and Crawford matchup is made, or a Thurman Spence, just any type of those, Triple G again, a rematch with Canelo. There's just so many possibilities and out there right now. And one of these guys, like a Crawford, a lot of people say Crawford is number 1 on theirs, but I see that a lot of people think that Crawford could beat Spence. So, my big question is, how can you put a guy number 1 pound for pound if you don't think that he could beat a guy in his weight class? It's interesting. I mean, what I mean by that, it's just a really interesting, debatable situation right now, and a good way for boxing. There's just a lot of possibilities and a lot of good fights out there to be made.
Yeah, absolutely. I, for one, would love to see that Spence Crawford fight, like you mentioned. I think that's a beautiful fight. And I just want to ask you.
But of course, you'll get the things out there too that Crawford shouldn't have fought him that early after jumping to 147. So unfortunately, with certain boxing fans, nothing's ever good enough. So
I know that. And I want to ask you also, Kelly, what are you up to these days? Obviously, you just kind of dropped a little hint there a moment ago that you're looking at training fighters. You've just got yourself a gym. Is that what's going to be happening in the near future for you?
Definitely. I've had, since I retired, a bunch of investments, from owning plazas and everything else. But those were all pretty much sit at home on my butt and, look at my phone and see what's going on type stuff. And I had that nice little break. But now, it's to get back in and get hands dirty and hands-on type work. And this weightlifting gym is going to be fun, of course. It's going to work hopefully hand in hand when I start training fighters. They could go to either one. So we're going to be doing that. Obviously, the podcast show that I have now, we get to travel to these fights, the big fights, and cover those. And it's interesting and keeps me busy. And I have to know now who's fighting and make sure I watch as many fights as I can, which gets a little tiring sometimes. But it's a good thing. Thank God I ain't gonna lie for YouTube too, though, because like some of the other fights that's hard to catch, I go to YouTube though and catch them. So yeah, that's been keeping me really busy. And obviously, my kids, my daughter's in 2 different types of orchestra and this other thing, and she's doing dance. And my son, he likes tagging along sometimes when I go to the boxing gym and jiu-jitsu and all this other stuff. So I'm busy just all around, and it's good. It's fun.
Excellent, man. Excellent. And finally, I like to ask this question to everybody that we speak to. You also said during the show that you're a fan of the UK fighters. Who would you say is your favourite UK fighter from any era, Kelly?
I'd have to say your guys' wild boy, Hatton. Everything. Him overall. Not even so much the fight. He just seemed like a cool dude. I definitely have to say him.
Yeah, I mean, mainly we get like Prince Nassim. That's probably the most.
I would say second.
Answer.
He would be second to me.
You got Calzaghe, you got Lennox Lewis.
Lennox Lewis was obviously a great heavy. I'm going just overall. I mean, I've met Lewis, and I held nothing against him saying my name wrong 3 times in the Jermaine Taylor and Miranda fight. But
what did he say? What did he call you?
Pavlik. Something like that. He's a tough cookie from Youngstown. That's how he would say it. But no, I like Lewis. Yeah, it's a hard question because you guys, believe it or not, you get put out a lot. And they all seem, very cool too, like humble. And but that's why I say Hatton, because Hatton plays darts. So then I'm a big dart thrower. So that was another reason. But Prince Nassim, he was fun to watch. I remember watching him when I was young. I was still a couple years from turning pro. So there's a lot of them, but Prince Nassim would be up there in around 2 or 3. I forgot about Lennox Lewis. Lewis was a cool dude. I like talking to him in the pre-fight thing. We had to sit down with the guys like Max and Lampley and Lennox Lewis. Always respected him. So yeah, handful. But I'm gonna stick with Hatton right now.
Yeah, no, it's another popular answer. It's been said quite a few times when I've asked that question. And just before we let you go, Kelly, have you got any kind of message to your UK supporters? Obviously, there's loads and loads of people over here who are well aware of yourself, been fans for years. What's your message to those guys?
Hey, just thanks for all the support. I truly appreciate to the people that enjoyed watching my career. Thanks for watching and helping make it what it was. And if you want to see what Kelly Pavlik is up to, you don't mind if I give my podcast a little.
Yeah, of course, go.
They can check it out. you can either just go right to the search engine and put punchline.live, and it'll take you to, a website, which is ours. Or you could go to YouTube and put the Punchline with Kelly Pavlik and James Dominguez.
Absolutely. And you're also on Twitter?
Yes, our Punchline is on Twitter. So I'm more of just a straight Facebook guy, but our PR lady, she puts us on Twitter and everything, and I hop in there and see what's going on also. So
Excellent
I'm getting good with it finally.
Excellent stuff. That, by the way, the Twitter is at kpavlik punchlin. Actually, there wasn't enough characters to put punchline, if I'm not mistaken. So head over and follow Kelly there. Okay, listen, Kelly, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Christmas special edition of the BoxHard Podcast. Thank you for your time. I wish you the best of luck with your gym and everything else. We'll no doubt speak again sometime in the future, I'm sure.
Hey, for sure. It was an honor, and it was fun BSing with you. And again, to all the fans and everybody else, thank you. I truly appreciate it. Happy holidays.
Okay, and this concludes what has been the 2017 Christmas special boxing podcast. It's been our gift to you. It's also been another unpredictable Christmas podcast in which we've had two guests on that were both making their BoxHard debuts. A big thank you to Spencer Fearon. A big thank you to the former middleweight king Kelly Pavlik. The current Prediction League scores are you, the listeners, on 21, Ayaz on 20, and myself at the back on 17. It's been the longest show we've ever done also, and that's because it's Christmas, so we decided to go the extra mile. Not only that, but all the other boxing podcasts out there are having a break over the festive period. We are not. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. Ayaz Sumra has been Ayaz Sumra. Thank you so much for all your entries about your pound for pound lists and all the other stuff. If there's one thing that we can ask you guys for, just for Christmas, it would be a review on iTunes. Just before I go, I'd like to wish you all a fantastic Christmas. I hope that you all enjoy your day, and we will see you, as per usual, next week.